Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another day of the Overwatch League here at the Grand Finals weekend presented by IBM. I am Achilles, joined by Wolf, and oh boy, do we have one hell of a match to kick off this day for you. We're going to have the Shanghai Dragons going up against the San Francisco Shock.
The Kings of the East meet the Kings of the West. San Francisco Shock versus the Shanghai Dragons. This is the matchup everybody has been waiting to see all season long, and we get it. It's happening. Here is our bracket and how we got here. If you tuned in yesterday, you saw Shanghai Dragons crush the Philadelphia Fusion 3-0.
Yeah.
San Francisco Shock, much more closer story there against the Seoul Dynasty. Almost a reverse sweep there, but they clutched it out in the end to get us where we are now.
Yeah, but it was really, really close until that final map where the Seoul Dynasty did get taken down. It was great perseverance from them. We'll have to see a little bit later on how they proceed forward in the lower bracket. I'll take a look at our playoffs pricing, however, because one of these two teams winning this match is going to guarantee themselves at least that runner-up prize pool of $750,000, and then they will be able to play for that big $1.5 million tomorrow in the grand final.
Big stakes here for these teams. It's hard to believe that this is real. It's hard to believe that the San Francisco Shock are going to rematch the Shanghai Dragons here. We had this matchup last year in the Stage 3 finals, and it was a pretty sick matchup then. But let's take a look at the road here for the San Francisco Shock. A lot of people expected them to crush Seoul Dynasty based on results, obviously, across regions. Seoul Dynasty had a weak start to the series, dropping the first two maps. Super was in on the Hog, but they had to make some adjustments mid-series. On started to have a little bit of a shaky performance on the Widow, wasn't able to compete with Fitz. And they were able to clutch it out in that final fifth map at the end of the day. But we could have been looking at an Asia versus Asia winners finals had that not occurred that way. And if you take a look at one of the more critical matchups going into today, it's going to be the Tracer matchup between Fleta and Striker. Striker always considered one of the strongest Tracer players in the world since the beginning of his career, and he faces off against Fleta. Now, if you look at the stats, right, there's two schools of thoughts always. There's the stats and the eye test, right? If you look at the stats and arguably the weaker region, Striker is one of the best Tracers. He's first in 2 metric second, tied for second, in 2 you could say. And Fleta, much lower on the totem pole on average. But on the eye test, Fleta seems to be the stronger player. All analysts voted him in. He ends up being the MVP of this season. So going to be a very exciting match to watch. I mean, Fleta definitely the most exciting thing about him this season. Why I was looking for him MVP was his Tracer play.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that if you do go toe-to-toe Tracer throughout this series, Striker very well could come out on top of Fleta, but it's that flexibility that he really has that gives him an edge. He can flip over to things like the Genji, the Pharah, depending on the circumstances, at a moment's notice, and continue to perform at the highest level. So Fleta's still going to be extremely deadly, whether he's on that Tracer or not. Shock, like we said, getting pushed to the limit, nearly getting reverse swept by the Seoul Dynasty yesterday. They've got their work cut out for them to try and take down the best team from the APAC region throughout the entirety of the 2020 season. Shanghai Dragons going to be vying for that spot for their first Grand Finals appearance. But before we get to them, before we see who they're going to be fielding today, let's go ahead and bring out our first squad from North America. It is the San Francisco Shock.
Defending champions, the favorites of the West. The West had to champion one team to send as first seed to this top 4. One team to be the team to challenge Shanghai Dragons. Everybody knew Shanghai would likely be in this winners finals. Very big favorites to win the whole tournament. But San Francisco Shock feel like the one team that stand in their way. They gave them a bit of a tough time in that Season 3 finals, or rather Stage 3 finals last year in the 2019 season. But Shanghai was able to prevail. I think this is about skipping the gauntlet, going straight to the grand finals, getting that extra time to rest and prepare and study, but also it's about revenge. It's about taking that finals they lost and turning it into this winners finals win, taking this revenge match and moving straight to that grand finals.
Well, their opponents, the people they have to get through if they want to get auto-seeded into that grand final, On the other side of the stage, representing the APAC region, it is none other than the Shanghai Dragons.
This year has been all about redemption for the Shanghai Dragons. An 040 season, 2018, 2019, a year of first. Their first win, their first playoffs, their first win in a stage finals, their first stage title. Didn't make it all the way to the finals then, but now Fearless rejoins the roster. Remember, he was on that 2018 roster. He was on the 040 roster, the winless roster. He didn't play yesterday. A lot of people had questions about that. Maybe they were fielding a roster that wasn't that serious for Philadelphia Fusion. They didn't take them that seriously. They crushed them now, but they bring tonight Fearless in this roster along with Lip. This is their main roster, the roster they've had so much success with this season. An almost perfect season, only dropping a few losses in regular season along the way. This is the terrifying lineup that Shanghai have had so much success with. This is the one that you should be afraid of if you're a Shock fan.
Well, here we go. Let's not wait any longer. Let's just go ahead and kick off this winner's final, jump straight into the action. Map 1 coming up for us here. It will be Oasis. Shock versus the Dragons. Let's see who can draw first blood on Control and put that 1 foot forward towards the grand final tomorrow.
There's been so many matches that we've wanted, that we've been promised over the years. If you think back to the Apex days, we never got that Lunatic High versus Runaway rematch in Season 3 or Season 4. Never got Runaway versus Ella Mystic we wanted. We never got that New York versus London rematch in the Barclays 2018 finals for the first season of Overwatch League. There's a lot of matchups that are anticipated that every single fan wants to see. And this is one of those matches, the highly anticipated #1 from North America, Shock versus #1 in Asia, Shanghai Dragons. And sometimes the brackets don't line up the way that you want. Sometimes those storylines don't come true. The best thing about this one, though, is we get it, and we might get it twice. Let's see how it plays out. I am so excited for this.
And here we go. The gates have opened. The players are pushing forward. We see a major adjustment here from the Shanghai Dragons off the bat. Fleta going for the Reaper. The Sombra backing him from Lip. So this is very much the playstyle of the Philadelphia Fusion, who we saw them take down just yesterday. Let's see how they pilot it now versus the Shock. They're going to be running with that Ashe. Striker now going to be swapping over onto the Tracer.
Yeah, and Shanghai Dragons running Reaper and Sombra, something they ran mostly in the playoffs. Obviously not yesterday, but this is the comp that they were able to mostly defeat Seoul with on their road here to this top 4. A composition we haven't really seen yet in this top 4, but they're bringing it in here now, Fleta and Lip. And already Lip getting a decent amount of EMP charge here as the first cap goes to the Dragons.
Yeah, there was a sleep dart connection on the Striker, but no one able to capitalize, so he does manage to stay alive. Back over onto the point now. Striker just going to be looking for a point of entry. A nice Bionade comes through from the side of the Shanghai Dragons, flips on the 2, and that's going to set up from Violet to be taken down. Now Choihyobin getting knocked out of the mech by Fleta. We'll get struck down by Striker, who's come up with 2 kills in the fight thus far. He's looking for a little bit more, but it's not going to be enough for them to break onto the point. They'll start inching their way forward, but for now, Shanghai Dragons still going to be in control at 33%.
Huge assassination onto Ons as well. That's going to be a long run back. San Francisco Shock have to regroup. And Violet doesn't have Transcendence. He had to play passive, he had to play safe with Fearless on the Winston and Void on the Diva, and he doesn't have the ability to counter this upcoming EMP, so it's basically a free win.
Yeah, EMP does come through, and Violet instantly hits the floor. Moth going to be taken down as well as Fearless dives into the back line, so both supports out of the fight for the side of the San Francisco Shock, and barring a miracle, there's not going to be much that they can do, so it will be yet another reset for the NA representatives. And
now for Shanghai Dragons, the game plan here with this Primal Rage is to stall out to 99, force Violet to use Transcendence, and build as much of Lip's EMP during this extended fight as they can. They have so many delay tools, they want to drain Shock's ultimates and set up for that final EMP fight. There's a great eat on the pulse.
Yep, just going to be snatching that one away. He wanted to break over the back line, take down those supports with that pulse bomb. Onto the Bob, will manage to find Fleta, who is obviously since swapped over onto the Tracer. Fearless finds one. Izayaki, however, going to be taken down. This is a great opportunity now for the San Francisco Shock to make their way onto the point. The Fearless falling, the flip comes in. Shock now in control, but 82% on the board for the Shanghai Dragons, so if they get that flip, it's one fight territory for the Shock.
Really nice play by the Shock. Sure, the Pulse got eaten, but it was a really clean fight. They were able to get the flip fast, so there is still hope. Even if Shanghai win this upcoming EMP fight, they don't necessarily just win the round. There's still that 17% extra of wiggle room, so a really nice retake for Shock. Now they have defensive advantage here. And good spy checking here by Choihyobin means Lip can't get that EMP right now when he wants it. They're going to buy a few more percentage points here.
Yeah, still got quite a bit of charge there, so just going to be 10% away from the EMP now. And they will have a sound barrier. They do have that self-destruct to even couple with the EMP if they want to go for that sort of play. To see what the call is going to be as Lip is yet again in the back line. And LeeJaeGon pulls the trigger, says, okay, we are going. Pops the sound barrier. EMP is going to be coming through. Doesn't hack out too many members on the side of the San Francisco Shock, but Striker crucially does fall at the beginning. Now Violet taken down again before he can have that Transcendence available to try to keep his teammates alive. LeeJaeGon will get picked off. Pulse Bomb coming out from Fleta, not going to be finding a kill directly, as the bomb from Ons will take down the baby Diva. Making sure that he cannot remech. Choihyobin going to be using his self-destruct on the point. They're looking to deny that remech, but they just can't quite do it. Went down to about 2 HP, and then does get back in. That's a bit more staying power here for the San Francisco Shock as they look to take the lead. But now Ons has fallen. Choihyobin taken out of the mech as quickly as he got back into it. And you can see now San Francisco just stringing onto the point, trying to buy as much time as they possibly can. Transcendence rolls through from Violet as they go ahead and push in, get their res onto Choihyobin. Tries to get back into the mech, but again, Lip is right there to deny it. Striker goes through with the recall, gives himself top back up, looks for that next pulse bomb, but Shanghai Dragons for now very much dominate the point and are looking for the flip back into their favor. They do take this.
Look at the pulse here on the Violet.
Oh! Perfectly timed, goes into the back, knew that Violet had no way of surviving that one. Does strike him down. Ons, however, gets rid of Void's mech, gets rid of Lip. Effectively 2 players going to be out of the fight right now for the Shanghai Dragons as they approach 99%. Pulse Bomb still online for Striker, going to be looking for a prime target to stick this to. Wrecking Ball might be a decent choice. You can hear the bomb coming through from Ons, been building those up very rapidly, causing further disruption here on the point, but actually seems like he just sends it off the side of the map. Maybe thought it was going to connect with somebody, but it does not happen. Just goes over the side. EMP out from Lip, does manage to catch Choihyobin, but Fleta does now fall. LeeJaeGon coming back in, has a sound barrier, drops the beat, only catches himself and Fearless in the fight. They try to buy a little bit of time. LeeJaeGon will find one, but Striker gets the return kill. Flip's coming back in now for the side of the Shock. With 6% left to go, Shanghai Dragons, can they do anything here?
Doesn't look like it. I mean, Fearless is dead. Void can try to rush in here and touch. You can see, obviously, Izayaki's already here, but it's just a stagger fight here. The trickle is not going to be enough. Void's got Bomb. That'll buy a little bit more time.
Pulse Bomb going to be lobbed in from Striker. Doesn't manage to find it. Was trying to get the stick there on a Fleta. Bit of a wanting ultimate. Self-destruct out from Void. And the remech does come through, so they still do have that tanky staying power here on the point, especially now that the minefields come in. Choihyobin throws the self-destruct up into the air. Striker going to be taken down by the mines quickly after he takes out Fleta, and LeeJaeGon falls to the self-destruct. Uncharacteristic of him as a Lucio player. Does get taken down, and now it's such a massive advantage here for the Shock. They clear off the point, and it's 100% to 99 in our first round of Oasis, and if this is telling us anything about how the rest of this series is going to go, Wolf, then I am so very excited.
I mean, both the series we saw yesterday had a similar fiery start as well. These control maps have been very back and forth. Remember that 17% of Legal Room I was talking about earlier when San Francisco Shock got the retake at 82, right? I guess it's 18%, right? But I was talking about that 99 difference, right? Between the 82 and the 99. San Francisco Shock, you know, they needed that time to regroup and take that final fight, but they got it. Shanghai Dragons had nothing left at that point. Shanghai Dragons have been ult fighting, right? Fighting around these EMPs, delaying with primals, but the coordinations of these ult fights where you're seeing the EMPs come through, Lip is coming up empty a lot of the time, and that's where Shanghai should be at their best in these scrappy fights, even when the ults don't go well. But San Francisco Shock is holding their own here, in fact taking that first round, so that does not bode well for the Dragons here the further this goes on.
Well, let's see how they approach now that we move over to University. LeeJaeGon, what was he doing? Just dives in on top of Violet's face. He strikes him down. Fearless does come in to get a little bit of vengeance here for his Lucio player, but now Lip is going to be eliminated. A very scrappy fight off the point here onto the high ground. Smurf goes in for the pile driver. Looking to finish off Fleta, who's only got a sliver of HP, and they will get him in the end. It's the Shock. Take the first lockdown.
I mean, Shanghai is playing so scrappy. That was extremely sloppy. And I have to say, I mean, you said uncharacteristic earlier of LeeJaeGon getting caught by the bomb, but I mean, really speaking though, like he has, I mean, yeah, he's a great Lucio player and that doesn't happen all too often, but sometimes in these important matches that does happen. Sometimes he does go too far, sometimes he does overextend, he gets punished for it. I mean, San Francisco Shock, they're trying to bring this crazy style, they're trying to be aggro, but San Francisco Shock plays in NA, they know how to deal with chaos.
Yep, I mean, he just kind of straight inted into that one. You can see a couple people in danger of getting knocked off there. LeeJaeGon did manage to wall ride around the back, but On spotted him out, finishes him off. Nanobu is going to be invested on the Fearless despite being a man down. Now the bomb comes through. Ons finds Lip at the same time. Fearless going to fall. And it's just a big waste of an Nano Boost here for the side of the Shanghai Dragons.
Yeah, this is really clean fighting from San Francisco Shock as well. They're really limiting Lip's ability to farm, and that's on Choihyobin, right? We talk about Choihyobin, MVP of the last Grand Finals, 2019 Grand Finals MVP, a role star. He's incredibly good at spy checking. He always has been. He's always been one of the best anti-Sombra divas in the league. And Lip, after 2 team fights, still doesn't have EMP, and that's what your comp is designed to fight around. He has it now, but it's too late.
Well, they need to get a flip very soon. Catching Violet, I mean, that would also be incredibly uncharacteristic. Gets caught by the EMP. EMP will come through. Violet not going to get caught, but they do manage to find Ons. And Moth hacked cannot go for a res, even if it was in clear territory. Pushing forward now over onto the point. The res comes in on the back end. Violet finds Fearless. This fight might not work out for the Shanghai Dragons. Self-destruct comes out up into the air. Void not going to be able to find anything in Ons. Took him down. Stick comes out on the LeeJaeGon as he tries to push up into Striker's face. They go 1-for-1, but it's very much the San Francisco Shock who win out on the fight overall. Fearless does have a primal rage. He might have to pop it just to get his way over onto the point. He does so. They're trying to gatekeep him off of the point. He manages to push in here finally at the last second, but it is just an absolute slaughter in the second round.
Yeah, Void and LeeJaeGon trading overtime tags here, but I don't think it's going to matter.
Sound barrier coming in. Fleta still alive, does have the pulse bomb. It would have to be absolutely massive if he wants to turn this one around. You can hear that pulse go through. Doesn't find a stick, doesn't find a kill. LeeJaeGon finds Ons yet again, a very crucial one here. If they can follow up on the Moth to make sure that the Ashe can't come back into the fight, that'd be good, and they do so.
If they turn this,
and
it looks like they will.
Low, and they will be able to cap this. It looked like it was certainly going to be done for, but Shanghai Dragons do manage to persevere at least for a little bit longer.
Now, Shock they're going to have a Transcends, which is really important for this next fight because they can actually just win the map right here if they can trance properly. You mentioned earlier, Violet's extremely good at anti-EMP trance. I mean, San Francisco Shock is built with players that are great versus EMP style against, Sombra players like Lip. So Lip is just going to look for that last 10%, but if Violet hits the trance well here, they should win that War of Attrition. Sound Barrier was used in that last fight. Moth will build up a Valkyrie, and that should be it. They're going to actually just force this fight on their terms. They're trying to cap.
Yeah, they're trying to bring them out onto the point.
Look at Violet's positioning way at the back.
Fearless.
He can't get caught here.
Make himself safe. Striker falling low. Will get topped back up by that Orb of Harmony. And yet again, it's LeeJaeGon who's pushing forward to try to take down a Tracer. And he just dies. Smurf rolls him over, takes him out of the fight. Now it's going to be the Coalescence, all the healing, but no one is touching the point. They finally do manage to touch in there. Void tiptoeing his way onto the point. EMP comes through. It's going to be a solo EMP on a Striker, and there's no follow-up damage to be found onto the Tracer. Dynamite up over the top for Lons, getting absolutely massive value. Pokes in around the back, finds Void, takes him out of the mech. Pulse bomb from Striker, gets rid of Fearless. Now Izayaki is going to be gone, and I don't think that they're going to be able to do this again. LeeJaeGon does not have a sound barrier. They do not have a chance here in the second round, and San Francisco Shock will just be able to take Oasis 2-0.
I mean, that was a pretty poor showing for Shanghai Dragons. Very weak ult pairing, very good denial, and very good spy checking by Choihyobin non-stop onto Lip, so he couldn't build those EMPs. The EMPs themselves were weak, and not the way he wanted to execute them. Violet is able to build these trances on time, but I think the big thing that everybody is going to be thinking about, the big takeaway from this map is what's going on with LeeJaeGon. He's aggressive. He's always been aggressive, but he's getting punished, right? I mean, this is when LeeJaeGon fans might be ripping the posters off the wall right now, because if he keeps playing like this, Shanghai Dragons might not be going to the Grand Finals.
Yeah, really, really weird disconnects here between the members on the side of the Shanghai Dragons, but that's just map one out of the way. Let's see how they fare on their map pick when we come back from the break, so don't go anywhere, guys. Already this match is fiery hot, so I'm looking forward to seeing how it continues to evolve when we come back to the next map.
The Overwatch League is brought to you by Cheez-It Grooves. Deep flavor, deep crunch. It's a mind crunch.
And by IBM, the official cloud and AI partner of the Overwatch League.
Golden Boy back in the spawn room, sharing with you some of the unbelievable opportunities planned for tomorrow when you tune in to the 2020 Grand Finals. First, want to make your way right here in the spawn room? Use the hashtag #CheckMeOWL and OWL2020 to post on our Grand Finals social wall, and maybe, just maybe, we'll read your post on the show. Then, thanks to our friends at Cheez It Grooves and Pringles Wavy, send a tweet using @Overwatch League and one of these Crunch Time Cam hashtags to get instant, real-time photos of the two teams in action tweeted right back at you. Remember to keep tweeting throughout the grand finals so you can get even more behind-the-scenes pics. And finally, during the match, we literally want to hear you cheer and share with the world your Overwatch League pride. Be a part of the grand finals broadcast like never before by going to overwatchleague.com/react and look for the Hear Me Cheer icon. I want to hear you. That's it from me. More from the Overwatch League 2020 Grand Finals coming right up.
The Overwatch League is brought to you by T-Mobile. Switch today and rank up to America's largest 5G network, T-Mobile.
And by IBM, the official cloud and AI partner of the Overwatch League.
Oh, Izayaki on the other side! Wait though, this is dangerous. Such a good DPS Sigma here.
Hello everybody and welcome to the 2020 Overwatch League Player Roundtable presented by Xfinity. I'm your host Danny Lim and today we have Izayaki and Void from Shanghai Dragons joining us today.
안녕하세요. 저는 상하이 드래곤즈에서 오프탱크를 맡고 있는 보이드라고 합니다.
안녕하세요. 저는 상하이 드래곤즈에서 플렉스 서포스를 맡고 있는 이자야키라고 합니다.
Void and Izayaki, how did you guys get into Overwatch?
저는 일단 대학을 준비하다가 게임의 길로 빠지게 되어서 워치를 시작하게 되었습니다.
저는 친구들이 다 저한테 이제 권유를 했어요. 제가 FPS 게임을 좋아하다 보니까 그렇게 해서 이제 시작을 했는데 너무 재밌는 거예요. 그때부터 빠지게 되었습니다.
What is it like competing at the highest level of pro play?
아무래도 빠른 속도가 제일 중요하지 않을까 그렇게 생각하고 있습니다.
생각을 빨리빨리 하는 거랑 빠른 템포로 게임을 하는 것이라고 생각합니다.
두 분 우승을 할 거라 자신하십니까?
노력하겠습니다.
Izayaki.
좋은 결과가 있도록 열심히 노력하겠습니다.
Void and Izayaki, thank you so much for your time and thank you so much for being here today. Shanghai Dragons, I'll be rooting for you guys.
네, 감사합니다.
감사합니다. 바이바이.
바이바이.
Thank you guys so much for joining on this episode of Player Roundtable presented by Xfinity.
Alrighty, and we are back and getting ready to jump into map number 2. A very nice start for the San Francisco Shock, who take Oasis away 2-0. I mean, a really close start, Wolf, but extremely dominant in the second round of
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. The first round had its issues, too. Like, the first round was, you know, one of those 99-99 final round sort of matchups, right? You know, you had the San Francisco Shock retake it that 82 mark for Shanghai Dragons. They were able to take that last scrappy fight. They had their ult economy better on that first round, and then were able to take that fight that pushed Shanghai Dragons over the edge where they couldn't recover. They couldn't take a real six-man team fight after that. When you're running the Sombra, and this is always kind of the case with Sombra when it's not a Sombra mirror, when you're running the Sombra comp against some of the other more meta comps, you're playing around the EMP. And Choihyobin is shutting Lip down at every turn, so much so that it's hard for him to build EMPs quickly. He's being outpaced by Violet, who's building insane transcendences, so the EMPs usually have minimal effect. And you can see, in somewhat of typical Lip fashion, like these EMPs aren't really hitting the mark. The positioning is too good for the Shock. And, you know, despite the first round going to Shanghai Dragons first, like they got the first cap, and they didn't end up taking it in the end, but despite taking that early advantage, they ended up falling apart. I'm not feeling good about the Shanghai Dragons after this first map. Like, I'm a little bit worried, you know, as us being the APAC casters casting this right now. I'm thinking Shock is looking a lot cleaner.
Yeah, they certainly are. But we're going to have some changes coming through from both teams. I think some would, you know, surprise some people, and the others might not surprise anybody at all. So we'll go ahead and take a look at our substitutions, as we will have Super stepping back in for the San Francisco Shock.
Super in here for Smurf. He played a very, very strong Roadhog yesterday. His Roadhog performance was, I mean, really, I feel like the only other player in this tournament that comes close to him right now is Gesture in terms of that, based on the performance we saw from him yesterday. Very impressive. Now that we're moving away from control, I think that's where we're going to be seeing Super sit is on that Roadhog role. And as we swap over to the Shanghai Dragons side of things with their substitutions, they will have 2 as well. So this is going back to the roster we saw yesterday. Diem, you can see how happy he is to be back in, and he's coming in with stand 1. So the same roster we saw yesterday, you know, a lot of people were speculating maybe they were just not taking the Fusion seriously. They weren't even running the proper roster. But it looks like when we're going to longer sightline maps, that this is the kind of roster they want to run. They want to put Diem in on Widow and Ashe. They actually want to pull Lip out and save him more as a Sombra specialist.
Yeah, so, you know, Fusion fans rejoice. You didn't get crushed by a B team at all, apparently. Well, we'll see how now this roster transition is going to fare for the Shanghai Dragons. It is going to be their map pick, so I'm curious to see exactly where they're going to be taking us here, and whether or not it's going to pay off. You know, we saw several times yesterday in that series with the Seoul Dynasty that their map picks weren't really working until the very end, right in the final hour, where they were nearly able to pull off that reverse sweep. But, yeah, I mean, this is a tall order already here for the Shanghai Dragons, given how things have looked.
Yeah.
Seems like we are going to be moving over onto Hollywood, however, for our second map of the series.
And you can see Shanghai Dragons hold the second fastest time bank record for Hollywood in 2020 at 3 minutes and 21 seconds. Shock does not appear on this list, but if you look at the teams in here, we definitely had some crazy ones. Justice versus Uprising, Mayhems versus the New Titans. You know, you could expect to see some of those in there. Spark and Charge, you know, against the Hunters. That was when Hunters was at their weaker point, but Dragons is versus Dynasty, which is actually arguably the most impressive opponent of these 5 you see listed. I think it's a pretty smart map pick because it allows you to play long sightlines for the majority of the map, which is why they have Diem in, right? On A, you can still play the long sightlines. That's where you're most vulnerable, but when you go to the Streets phase, that's when you're going to have your best time with Diem on Widow, controlling high grounds around the saloon here, take the elevator up or grapple up to the top, and you have free reign. You're going to play that matchup against Ons. You know, it's not an easy one. And in fact, this is one of the more incredible matchups we're going to see. We talked mostly about the Fleta Striker matchup earlier, but Ons Diem on the Widow v Widow, I mean, that was our Widow Maker 1v1 finals that we had in the APAC All-Stars. This is a matchup you want to see.
Yeah, and I think that Diem is, you know, maybe after watching that first round and how accurate Ons was, maybe he's hoping that Ons is going to be sleepy again for this match. But I'm pretty sure he got well rested and is still going to be clicking heads. It was already a scary sight on Oasis, and you can see he's already flashing the Widowmaker at least for the start. But I might just see him swap back over onto the Ashe here once things get moving.
Yeah, and you could see Choihyobin has at the moment locked in the Zarya, but I was going to say I think it's more likely we're going to see the Sigma here, and that he does swap that over. Violet obviously going to be swapping off of the Zenyatta as well, or swapping onto the Zenyatta, excuse me, as well. The Western style is to play the Zenyatta. The Eastern style has overall been to play the Ana. You can see the Dragons are going to match the Zenyatta this time around. They have the double sniper defense here. Ant is going to try to win out with long range, but with the sightline struggles he's going to face, if he doesn't get an opening pick, he probably will swap over to the Ashe like you mentioned. It's going to be an early attempt, and then I think we'll see that swap come through if he doesn't find anything.
Well, for now, Fleta just to get some pot shots through the security room, trying to find a connection. It's a couple nice little hits in to build himself up to around 40%. Start making their way. Stand 1 for now. Just going to be trying to hold the gate. Hook going to be interrupted, however. And now they're going to pull in on the stand 1. He was left out by himself. No one there to try to peel for the Roadhog. And good luck, LeeJaeGon getting into a position to try to res this. Shock are still sitting right on top of his corpse. Diem, however, does manage to open things up by finding a pick on a Striker. The res is there instantly, but Diem strikes back yet again. Now finds Striker, and you can see why Diem gets brought in. Hans will manage to finish off the enemy Ashe. Now looks for another target, gets the headshots onto Izayaki. Picking up similar terms here for the Shanghai Dragons. LeeJaeGon had to go ahead and choose the Ashe. Izayaki falling moments after.
Diem,
you can see, however, the hold is going to be there for the first volley.
Diem saves the day with an insanely risky flank after what was a very, very risky flank position for Stand 1. You know, the car interrupting the hook actually really hurt them, but again, Super knows exactly where he is. This is so predictable.
Is this a replay?
Like, this is Hog 101. Like, Super's like,
oh,
really, dude? You're doing this in the winners finals? And I mean, this could just be wide open.
Stand 1 saying they'll never see it coming a second time in a row. Dies in the exact same spot. Now they make their way over onto the point where the first tick is going to be coming through, and Shanghai Dragons just cannot push forward without Stand 1 there. Diem's going to be swapping over all Maker, but this is just going to have to be point A completely conceded. So now you have 4.5 minutes of the time bank for the San Francisco Shock. Stand 1 going out on an island by himself again is so detrimental for the Shanghai Dragons.
I mean, it's a really greedy move, and realistically, this comp was made by the Seoul Dynasty for having the Roadhog as peel, and you know, to use more defense, to be using it more defensively, like Super is actually, who's punishing Stand 1's really obvious flank attempts. The first time, okay, he got the hook, but it was interrupted, fair game. But the second time, it's like, all right, you know, this is actually a mistake. Now, this is where Shanghai is really going to have Diem take the biggest advantage, right, in terms of his hero pool, right, his Widowmaker on this high ground.
Yep. Drop down comes in, they get the counter hook in onto Super, making sure that he can't take a breather, try to keep himself alive. Flux comes out now from Choihyobin, pushing them up into the air. Transcendence is out from both teams, but will get res back into the fight. Answering Flux there from Void, drops into the ground. Diem finds the better of Ons, taking him out before Striker can answer back, and that is going to be, I think, a first for me. Void takes away the Dragon Strike with the Kinetic Grasp.
Yeah, it's, you know, ends up being fairly non-consequential. You could argue the Dragon Strike might have bought them more time. I mean, they do have spawn advantage here, and they are rushing right back onto the card. I think to step back and take a different high ground position. They can't hold this one anymore. Choihyobin is starting to push them back and pressure those members who were caught, you know, obviously a little bit too far forward. As you can see, San Francisco Shock move this card around. Fleta gets the pick here. Diem takes high ground. And this is the most important part of this defense for Shanghai Dragons, making sure Diem holds this indefinitely.
Yeah, Fleta now pushing forward as Diem sits back, keeping Ons at bay. A nice shot there on a Moth in the air as Fleta does manage to dismantle both of the supports here for the side of the San Francisco Shock. So the cart gets a little bit of extra distance on the resurgence there of the Shock, but they will be held up here at the corner.
And this is your Alamo if you're the Shanghai Dragons. This is On's most famous position, by the way, in his career before Overwatch League, when he was playing, obviously, in Contenders Korea. You and I were casting him as he always would hold this place indefinitely, where you can see Diem popping high ground, low ground. He's obviously on the attack right now. But this is his most famous map.
LeeJaeGon though. So now, Mercy out of the fight. Flux is going to be coming in response. As Void puts him up into the air, drops them back down. Transcendence is there, however, from Violent. Izayaki trailing behind just a little bit. Pull comes in onto Stand 1. Tries to get the corner hit there with the whole hog onto Super. Is unable to do so, and then obviously while channeling that ultimate, can't heal himself. And without the Mercy in the fight, with Izayaki getting picked off here on the back end, it will just crumble. So the cart now going to start moving around this final corner. And Shanghai Dragons, this is where it gets really tricky to exit the studio, because Ons is now the one with the high ground, with the sidelines.
Yeah, and Super has whole hog. Super is crushing Stand 1 in this matchup. It's not even close. And Shanghai Dragons, I mean, they're going to try to peel out here, but this is so risky. They've got to commit trance.
Yeah, that right side flank coming in from Diem, gets the input side up, pops that one instantly. LeeJaeGon falling low. Void going to be taken down. Choihyobin finding the kill. LeeJaeGon tries to go in for the res, but will just be struck down in mid-air, in mid-res. The cap comes in onto point B, and it's just shy of 3 minutes now to finish the map for the San Francisco Shock.
3 ults committed for Shanghai, and they get nothing. Super sent LeeJaeGon into outer space. Izayaki's trance allowed them to get onto the point, split in 2 groups, but they weren't able to regroup. They weren't able to take that fair fight because everyone was disjointed. They had to come out in 2 groups. Super pushed everybody apart, and LeeJaeGon wasn't relevant as Valkyrie didn't get any value, and it was a shooting gallery for Ons, who now again is trying to take this high ground away. The cart just rolls. This is actually insanely good time here for the San Francisco Shock. Not going to be a record maker, but this is winners finals.
Yep, well, great pick there as they push their way through Control room. Ons does get taken out. Stand one finding Super. They rock him. They pull him to the side. The headshot is good. Great combo there from the side of the Shanghai Dragons. You can see, however, Dragon Strike comes through from Striker. Manages to find Izayaki. Didn't have an ult to try to keep himself alive, and Diem was taken down by Violet moments before that. The res now comes through from Moth, putting Super back into the fight. Stand one finds another execution, this time onto Striker, as Diem will be resed back in. But the cart, for now, still going to be inching forward for the San Francisco Shock, constantly gaining ground.
Yeah.
Shanghai Dragons, they need to do something to stop this advance.
They tried to go for the combo there with the Dragon Strike. It doesn't work. It doesn't come up with anything. Stand one gets taken out by Super again. And now Ons has full line of sight for anyone who tries to peek out here, including the Zen.
Oh. Almost found Izayaki. Dangerously close there, and this severely limits Izayaki's ability to try to build up towards the Transcendence because he can't be shooting people. Rez does manage to come in. LeeJaeGon, however, not going to be allowed to escape. Ons does find the headshot, but Diem strikes back, comes up with two. Back-to-back on the Choi, then Striker. Violet gone. Cart going to be halted. 1 minute and 10 seconds remaining. This is certainly winnable for the side of the Shanghai Dragons, but they are really being pushed to their limit by the Shock.
They really are. But now they have a Trance. They have Diem with sightline advantage. Ons can't flank. He has a very limited box that he has to fire through, right? That main archway. And you can see him right there. You see that silhouette straight in the middle of your screen. That's what he's trying to work with here. He's trying to figure out how he can maybe sneak around. He's hiding his positioning, so the Shanghai Dragons have to keep guessing as to where he is. He's going to come in later after the fight starts, but they only have 40 seconds left to finish this map, but it's going to have to be Ons getting a pick, I think. Otherwise, this is just going to go astray. They just can't even break out of this high ground here. Fleta's now up here, and he's got Storm Arrows, tons of burst damage with Discord Orb. They're actually jumping down to push the cart, but they're not getting much distance.
Flux comes in, Void's already gone. Transcendence has to be used. They get the pull in onto Izayaki, trying to deny some of that healing from coming through, but gets straight back over to LeeJaeGon to ensure the res goes off. Void's still under a bit of pressure, has that Discord Orb on him, does get pulled in by Super, taken down. Somebody's got to tag the card. Who is going to be able to do it? LeeJaeGon drops in, but he's a very squishy Mercy. They're looking for the kill. 0.74 meters left to go now as it's down and dirty here for the Shanghai Dragons, trying to keep things contested, but it's just not going to be allowed to happen. The finish comes through on Hollywood for the Shock, but they were able to take the clock down to 0 for the Shanghai Dragons.
Yeah, down to 0 here. Very, very close finish for the San Francisco Shock. And the kind of wraparound we saw, if you look at this view right here, you see that high ground to the top left there? Shock went up there while they had Ons on the low ground taking different angles. So he was threatening the Dragons, so they couldn't really easily push up without taking damage. They got chipped down. Then when they pushed San Francisco Shock up, they actually dropped down and then were able to take that fight there, denying DM sightline.
Yeah. Man, what a start to Hollywood here. And obviously, we all wish that we were in the arena in person, guys, but since we can't do that, we've created React to give fans the chance to cheer on their favorite team from home with live reactions, so make sure you guys check it out at the link there on your screen and show your favorite team some love. Because if your favorite team is Shanghai Dragons, they could use the love right now.
You know, I mean, it's not all bad for the Shanghai Dragons, Achilles.
It's not.
I mean, they turned that one around. Really nice positioning by Choihyobin, as I was mentioning earlier, to deny that sightline. Diem kind of, he was where he wanted to be, but there was a barrier in his face. Choihyobin got to actually save a lot of that. And if you take a look at this angle here that Choihyobin has right here, you can see how much he's blocking. Look at the hook here, by the way, pulling Izayaki out so the healing wouldn't come through as well. But Choihyobin's right up at the front. Diem can't do damage. Choihyobin's been phenomenal this series. Every map, every round, every step of the way.
Pretty much everybody on the side of the Shock has certainly had their moments. Well, let's see how the Shanghai Dragons do fare. Diem's not going to be starting with the Widowmaker. He's going to be on the Ashe.
Yeah, he wants to play it safer because they know they have to finish the map. They can't take huge risks. They can't play that Ons opening, you know, that we saw before. He actually has to rely on Dynamite and a slower poke war here, I think, if they want to be able to guarantee a decent time bank. It's just too risky. You might find yourself 0-2 if you try the Widow and can't find those picks. You don't have a Bob. You don't have any other utility. So I respect this choice. You know, if the attackers were, if they were the attackers first, I think it'd be the other way around, but they're not, so the rules are changed.
See them scrambling around, trying to find their point of entry here onto the point. Sonic Arrow gives a bit of vision. Fleta just trying to pop these ones right over the top of the boxes, try and get a connection onto Ons. It's been rather elusive thus far. Tiptoeing their way now onto the front corner. Here are the tank line for the Shanghai Dragons, but Stand 1 is going to be cut down by Violet. The headshots come through. Discord Orb's doing absolute wonders here for the side of the San Francisco Shock. fight very much going to be won by them, as LeeJaeGon will not be allowed to exit. Void is now in danger of getting staggered.
You know, after yesterday's matches where Shock got taken to a 5th map by Seoul, and we saw Shanghai Dragons obliterate the Fusion, you know, you'd think the NA teams would both be the ones really needing the reality check. Like, Asia's harder than, you know, than we thought. But it feels like Shanghai Dragons are the ones getting a reality check in this series. They're not playing clean, they're not playing together, they're playing their own scrappy style. They're splitting into 2 groups, and San Francisco Shock is so experienced against us. They are just crushing it every time they try to make a play, try to make one of these scrappy team fights happen where they try to go for a flank, do something risky. San Francisco Shock is prepared every single time. This isn't going to work. Now they are grouped, now they're trying to move together, but you can see Shock are ready, and they're going to have to try to flank around. The clock is going down, as someone would say. The wick is burning on this one.
It really is. I mean, more than half of their time now gone. They've barely stepped foot on the point, be it just for a few seconds. Striker still holding on to the Dragon Strike, waiting for his opportunity. And you can see that they just can't quite make up their mind. They can't find a way to get themselves onto the point. Now LeeJaeGon is dead. Ons finds the headshot. Fleta pops back, does find Striker, but the res is instantly there from Moth. The Transcendences now are going to get pulled out. Izayaki trying to help escort the tank line forward. Flux going to be coming in from Choihyobin. They don't have the defensive ultimates to try to survive through this, which means that San Juan does fall. Diem and Fleta do manage to find 2, taking down Ons and Violet, but Striker and Super come back in. Striker now finding a double kill as he gets rid of Void. Then Fleta. Res out onto the Sigma. Void comes back into the fray. Does nearly have that Flux online. Super surrounded between a Bomb and a Mercy. Didn't know which way to go. Either way, it led to death. So did get taken down. It seems like the Shanghai Dragons finally have broken through and will get this cap on A. But that being said,
it's not over yet.
There are still members of the Shock pushing their way back over onto the point. All of Shanghai Dragons pull away from the point to finish off Choihyobin, which gives a little bit more room for the Shock to inch forward. The Wrecking Ball is now out from Super. Stan One taking a breather. The hook not going to connect. He's getting chunked out. Whole Hog comes through. Does help take down Violet. And this should pretty much be the end of it here, as Moth will fall in the end. But man, what a great delay by the Shock here on the backside of that. 3 minutes now on the clock for the Shanghai Dragons to try to make it to point B.
Yeah, Shanghai fans ever breathing a sigh of relief here, but I think you're probably going to have to take another deep breath in just a second, because now Ons has the high ground. This is, as I said earlier, his most famous map in sniper metas before he joined the San Francisco Shock, before he came to the Overwatch League. This is his playground, Hollywood rooftops, the high ground here on the streets phase, and Diem is going to struggle. He swapped over to the Widowmaker here, but he has sightline disadvantage, and so much of the clock has already been ticked away here for the Shanghai Dragons.
And Stan One is dead yet again. Pushed up here. Over towards that high ground. Now Void falling. No front line for the Shanghai Dragons. Just going to have to cower back around the corner as the Shock continue to dominate the cart.
I mean, Striker is having a phenomenal performance. There's the Widowmaker kill I was talking about. Striker is killing it on this Hanzo. He's dropping down and getting burst kills. He's getting cleanup kills. His Dragon Strikes have saved several team fights for them already on this map alone. And Ons has sightline control here. Now vision coming through from the Sonic Arrow, so he doesn't even have to pop his ult here to know where everyone is standing. And he's just going to wait it out.
Yep. Inching up now, walking along the patios of the buildings. Cracking Fleta, trying to get that headshot. Can't quite make it happen. Now they have an angle on him. They know exactly where Ons is going to be operating from. Flux comes out from Void. Pulls Moth up into the air, takes him low, but they can't quite capitalize for the kill. The Transcendence comes out from Violet before they can find the Mercy. They take him down. Void dropping down, goes in, finds the accretion stun here on the Choihyobin. They capitalize and collapse, taking out the enemy Sigma. Cart now moving up around the second to last corner. If they can keep this momentum, then it's going to be decent for them. They still need to finish this. They want to finish this map with time in the bank, but finishing it with more than a minute seems like a very big Far Cry hope.
Let's see if Shock try to deny this. I don't think they will. I don't think they should. This is an even crazier position to try to deny from, but they're going to go for it. Super steps forward. They don't commit 3 ults like Shanghai did on their attempt, but this is actually going to be a better time bank than you would have expected. It's actually not that far behind San Francisco Shock when they got to this point. It's almost the same. But they got to step back now. They do not want to overextend and get some stagger kills going over here to this Dragons, or that's going to be a fast 3-man cart push around the corner. This is where, once again, Ons is going to try to operate sightline advantage. And they have a moment here where you can actually just operate up on the catwalks before they actually look for that archway control around C. Stand one.
Sonic Arrow.
Please don't overextend again. Stand one. Super is waiting for you.
Yeah, that he is. But since Stand 1 didn't overextend, they found LeeJaeGon. So they'll just go ahead, push forward, take control of the cart, and cut the Dragons in two.
This is a very sloppy game for the Dragons, and the San Francisco Shock look on fire. They have momentum. No one's choking. Everyone is just playing their best. The coordination is certainly on point.
Well, now they're pushing out around the corner looking for Choihyobin. They do manage to find him. Not enough support there. They try to keep him alive. Violet falling low, but barely got the Transcendence online in time. Pops that one instantly as Moth takes to the skies with a Valkyrie and finds the res, bringing Choihyobin back into the fight where he can sit up on that high ground. Pluck's now coming through, pulls Void up away from the Dragon Strike, but the slam damage is still going to be more than enough to go ahead and take him down.
Meanwhile,
the cart remains in control of the Shock.
Meanwhile, Super is on his own solo queue mission to whole hog on the side, then kill Diem off on the side, then rejoin his teammates. If he had gotten punished and killed out there, which he couldn't have because the Shanghai Dragons were too split, then that could have been a great opportunity for the Dragons, but he's not punished. He does get the kill, he does get the rejoin, and his mission is a success. Shanghai Dragons really need this trans fight to be a great one.
Flux rather now coming out from Void, flexing on Super, I guess you could say. Dragon Strike will go ahead and follow. Cuts down Choihyobin, pushed up into the face of Striker with the kinetic grasp rolling. Looks to just go ahead and finish off the enemy Hanzo. Cart now pushing forward. Izayaki res back into the mix. 20 seconds remaining for the Shanghai Dragons. They have a couple of ultimates here. Can they get this push going through?
Stand 1
Still
needs
time
to,
in the bank. Obviously,
he needs to use this ult to guarantee the finish. I think that's their best chance. I mean, he's got to hold it to the last second.
They have to hope for it. Gets the pull here on the Choihyobin. Does manage to finish him off. The whole hog coming through, but now going to be interrupted by Super with that hook. Transcendence is out on the cart. The res comes through. The protection from Moth has been sublime from the side of the San Francisco Shock. Stand 1 now gone. Super lets loose with the whole hog, shoving them back, shutting down the hopes and dreams of the Shanghai Dragons from tying up this series. The OT will bleed away as Fleta falls down. And there's just no one alive to try to capitalize to extend that OT for a miracle turnaround. The San Francisco Shock instead will just move up 2-0 now at match point in this winners final. They are one map away from sending the Shanghai Dragons down into the losers bracket.
Oh, everyone is so happy, you could see. I mean, they look exhausted as well. This is not an easy fight. This is not an easy battle, but it is a one-sided one. I mean, is it as one-sided as Philly's loss yesterday? Not quite, but it's coming close, and we'll see how that third map goes because it might very well end up being the same. I have to say, I feel like if there's one person who's angry, if there's one person who's about to get real loud, it's Coach Moon, Coach of the Year here for the Shanghai Dragons, known to be a very aggressive coach, known to be someone who does get into players' heads. It turns their motivation around, and we'll see if he can actually do that here as we go into this halftime break.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a tall order here, but if anybody could do it, it would be Coach Moon. But man, now in the position to need to pull off a reverse sweep. We saw the Seoul Dynasty in this very same position just yesterday. They made it to a map 5. Shanghai Dragons, can they do similarly here? Can they pull it off and make a miraculous turnaround to advance straight into the grand finals? We're going to find out, but first we're going to have our halftime break coming up, so don't go anywhere, guys. The desk is going to break down the action for you in just a few.
The Overwatch League is brought to you by IBM, the official cloud and AI partner of the Overwatch League.
And by Coca-Cola, the official refreshment of the Overwatch League.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the spawn room. It's Golden Boy. Time to play Name That Map. Not only name it as quickly as you can. You'll see what I mean in a moment. Let's go ahead and name that map. All right. Oh, I have no idea what that is. Ooh, balloons. I like balloons. Oh, that's right. It's Blizzard World. Congratulations to everybody that got it right. So much more to come from the spawn room and much more from the Overwatch League 2020 Grand Finals coming right up.
Welcome to our first game break of the day, presented by Cheesy Grooves. Zoe here, joined by my trusted analyst Costa, as well as Reinforce. And currently, the San Francisco Shock once again are up 2-0 at the halftime. So let's dissect the action and talk about how we actually managed to get here. Because quite frankly, same scenario from yesterday, right? The Shock were leading the charge 2-0, but then after the first half, the Seoul Dynasty actually managed to, kind of get back into it, but two different teams. So Dynasty will be playing later today. For now, we're going to be watching the Shanghai Dragons trying to fight their way back into it against the San Francisco Shock. And the Dragons, they had a decent enough start, right? At least on control. But then San Francisco Shock just kind of managed to string it together and then actually walk away with it. So we're going to talk a little bit about what happened to the Shanghai Dragons and their playstyle specifically. And all of that is going to happen in our crunch time, presented by Cheesy Grooves. So Reinforce, it looked to me like the Dragons seeming a little bit over-eager, a little bit not overextending, but they were very, very aggressive. Overconfident, maybe?
Yeah, well, they came out with this dive composition, so of course you want to be able to play fast and get into these fights early. But it did seem at times like they were trying to go a little bit too fast at times. I think this fight that we're showcasing here in our crunch time is a great example of that. Fearless takes a ton of damage going into the fight, and then where's the defense matrix, right? Void has been so good on the Diva throughout, but Fearless gets poked down. LeeJaeGon then gets Discord orbed by Violet on the side of the San Francisco Shock. And it's really hard to make this work then, because you're diving in, but you've already taken so much damage. LeeJaeGon goes down, and from that point on, they decide, well, we're already here, let's Nano or Winston and try to go in anyway. But you've already lost your Lucio, you don't have any speed boost, so this level of hesitation combined with lack of discipline is really the story for me so far with the Shanghai Dragons. We'll get to map 2 later, but I think Wolf on the cast did a great job of highlighting how it was hard for the Shanghai Dragons to really get into these fights before the San Francisco Shock had found an advantage. So that is certainly something you have to look out for in the second half with the Shanghai Dragons. Maybe a bit more discipline is in order.
Yeah, talking about LeeJaeGon, Johnny brought him up a little bit, but for me, I think he really needs to maybe adjust his play, because he was going aggressive and almost to the point of kind of inting, because he was getting punished very thing. He had 8 deaths per 10 minutes, which is a lot for a Lucio. We actually unfortunately don't have the stat for this, but the number of times he died first before the rest of his team was way too high. We saw a little bit in the second map as well, but I think LeeJaeGon just needs to pull back on the reins a little bit. Obviously, maybe he's just not used to the amount of pressure that the San Francisco Shock exude and the amount of damage that they actually do, but LeeJaeGon, especially in that first map, really struggled to get anything done.
Yeah, I mean, in general, it just seemed to me that the Shock got a lot of very, very important pickups very early in those engagements. And I'm not calling anyone a feeder, but I do feel like the Shock definitely didn't go hungry after that game. That's for sure. Now, if we're looking at map number 2 between those two teams, there was quite a lot of different battles, and at times it looked sloppy. But Costa, you did a great job explaining to me in our green room, that actually is applicable now. In our green room, you actually explained to us why it looked sloppy. Can you maybe repeat that for the audience out there?
Yeah, and I think this is really important to note, that this isn't just teams playing necessarily badly. You need to be playing this aggressive style, but I definitely think San Francisco Shock is doing a better job of punishing the people that are trying to play aggressive. When you are playing these massive pick comps with the Hanzo, with the Widow, with the Roadhog, it's all about making space for each other so that you can get picks. But the issue that they're having, especially with Stand 1, is he was getting isolated early way too often. And, Wolf and Achilles did a great job of highlighting it. He went down way too much. I think they need to find some adjustment, because Shock seem to be trying to sort of hit that weakness over and over again of isolating Stand 1 before the rest of the Dragons team can help him. Maybe Stand 1 needs to play a little bit more passive while allowing their Hanzo to play more aggressive. So some adjustments definitely need to be made at this halftime, Johnny.
Yeah, and I think the story of this series so far is, of course, I mentioned in the crunch time, that we lacked some discipline from the Shanghai Dragons. And when you're getting caught off guard so often, if you're the Shanghai Dragons or if you're getting poked down early in the fights, that often means that you start slowing down a little bit because you want to calm yourself down. You don't want to overextend anymore. You don't want to take that damage unnecessarily. But that also means that you're going for less plays, right? You're less proactive in your play. And I think that's what we saw as well on the Hollywood, where Shanghai Dragons, they really slowed down their play overall and really said like, hey, we don't want to take this damage going into fights. That means we're going to take a lot longer to reset. We're going to take a lot longer to actually get onto the objective and to push up accordingly. And so this is what this San Francisco Shock does. Because they are so good at capitalizing on unforced errors by the opponent teams, that means that some of these teams, they have to take a deep breath, they have to slow down their play and play way more disciplined. And that can be very hard for a team when you're in our winners bracket finals leading into the grand finals, right? So I think this is a big challenge for the Shanghai Dragons, and it's going to be very exciting to see in the second half how they adapt their play accordingly to what the Shock are doing so very well.
Absolutely, and it is the map pick from the Shanghai Dragons heading into the second half. We are going to head over to Volskaya, and we're also going to see some subs. Super is going to come out, Smurf in for the Shock, and on the other side, Fleta is going to leave the stage, and Lip is back in, and that caused some head scratching here on our virtual desk, guys.
The only thing that makes sense to me is Sombra Widow. I don't see another situation in which they would take Fleta out. I feel like he is just so flexible that I think that's the only thing that makes sense.
Yeah,
well,
it's going to be a bit confusing for me too, Zoe, so let's see what comes. Maybe Wolf
you
can
know
tell
what?
us. Maybe Wolf. Maybe knows.
Exactly. They are going to break this down. We are going to head into map number 3 here in our winner bracket final of our grand final weekend. So stay tuned.
The Overwatch League is brought to you by Cheez-It Grooves. Deep flavor, deep crunch. It's a mind crunch.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Spawn Room. I'm Golden Boy. Time to play Name That Player. We provide fun facts about an Overwatch star. You provide the player. Here are your 3 clues. Leads the league in all-time eliminations. First in final blows per 10 minutes as Ashe this season. Was the inaugural Grand Finals MVP. The answer, you already guessed it, it's Prophet. Congrats to everybody that got it right. So much more to come from the Spawn Room and, of course, the Overwatch League 2020 Grand Finals. Don't go anywhere.
The Overwatch League is brought to you by Xfinity, the preferred internet provider of the Overwatch League.
And by IBM, the official cloud and AI partner of the Overwatch League.
Yeah. This is definitely a tough start for the Shanghai Dragons. This is the matchup where you think to yourself, like, if you bought tickets to go see this match, even if you're a Shock fan, you're pissed. You're like, this is actually not what I came to see. You know, this is the anime moment where the guy is beating up on his rival, and he's like, get up! I don't want to win this easily, you know? Get up, stand up, so I can beat you down again, right? This is actually not even close. This is like everything we want. You know, I said, okay, we lost out on a lot of critical matchups that people really wanted to see in Korea over the years, in Overwatch League over the years. You know, we missed out on these matches. The brackets didn't work out. We got this match, but did we really get it? Are we really getting it? If Shanghai Dragons brings it back here, the answer is yes. But if they don't, I mean, this is definitely going to go down in history as one of the biggest. I don't know, expectation breaker matches is going to go down as the biggest disappointment in Overwatch League in terms of big matchups that just did not hit the mark. Like, I mean, I think a lot of people, you know, even if you're a Shock fan, are probably thinking like, well, this isn't even what I wanted. This isn't even what I came to watch. I stayed up for this.
Yeah, I mean, you want that close victory, that tight-knit one against a team that's, you know, been so good, such as the Shanghai Dragons, but it's just not been close. And now the Shanghai Dragons need to channel their inner Seoul Dynasty, which is not something that I ever thought that I would say. But they need to do that to try to bring this series back. We do have some substitutions, though. For the side of the San Francisco Shock, it will be Smurf stepping in for Super yet again. So we'll just be seeing the composition run in map number 1 here for the Shock on Oasis.
Yeah, you have to imagine.
Over on the side of the Shanghai Dragons, we have a very interesting substitution. Lip is stepping in for Fleta.
Yeah, so this is going to be a Lip Diem duo, and we are I'm going to go ahead and tell you guys the map as we head into it. We are going to Volskaya Industries, so there's a low chance, but there's a possibility we see something like double sniper, like Widow Ash double sniper, right?
Potentially.
Striker has been crushing the Hanzo matchup. It hasn't even been close. It's not been fair, which is something that you don't really, you know, you don't think you're ever going to say about Fleta, right? In any matchup, especially on a Hanzo that he's played quite extensively this season. But he is getting crushed. Striker is obliterating the matchup, so it might be Lip flexing that role. What I don't want to see, though, on Volskaya Industries, a map where sightlines are king, sightlines control everything, is Sombra. I don't want to see any Sombra here from Shanghai Dragons. If they go back to the Sombra, if they go back to Comfort, then I think this series is over. I think that San Francisco Shock have shown time and time again they know how to shut this down. Even on arguably Sombra's best map type control, they destroyed it. Wasn't even close. Choihyobin is shutting it down. So I'm concerned. I want to see when those heroes get locked in here in a few seconds what they're going to be. But, you know, until that moment, I'm just going to hold my breath on this, I feel.
Okay, well, it will be first on the attack for the Shanghai Dragons, so obviously the things that we're seeing right now being hovered aren't necessarily going to be things that make their way out onto the battlefield. San Francisco Shock, however, on the defense, just going to be a lot of the same. You know, this is what we saw from them on Hollywood. It's going to be that double sniper with the Widow Hanzo.
Yeah, I mean, there's a chance that this is that the Pharah is real, but you would expect Fleta to be playing that, so extremely unlikely. Looks like it is going to be Lip flexing over the Hanzo here. Really did not expect to see that over Fleta. Coach Moon decision here at the most critical moment of their top 4 so far. And Diem will play the Widow, so it is going to be double sniper, just not the one that, you know, that we might see on defense later.
Okay, well, Moon saying, you know what? League MVP, you're not cutting it. Time to swap it around. So Lip coming through with the Hanzo. Let's see how he fares against Striker, who had a phenomenal map of Hollywood with the very same pick. Pop-up shots coming after both of these Widowmakers, but neither finding a connection. But as I say that, Diem down on the low ground does manage to find Striker. A solid start. The res is there from Moth, so they can't quite fully punish this. Smurf going to be taking a breather. You can see that hook coming in from off screen as Dan1 tries to get the yoink on him. Can't quite find it, and Lip, moments away from striking down Smurf, does fall. But the res is there from LeeJaeGon to put him back into the fight.
This is scary. They've got the high ground here, and Shock are kind of relegated back into this room where they're going to be cut off by this barrier.
And this just shows the earlier pick on Striker how important that was, because the res is still on cooldown from Moth, so he can't try to get into a position to bring Smurf back into the fight. That's why you see him swapping over onto the Wrecking Ball, which once they move over to point B, he's likely going to swap back off of. So this could be absolute devastation here for the side of the San Francisco Shock. Shanghai Dragons looking alive right now, pushing around the side, looking for the predictive hook, but Smurf was already dead. A very fast cap for the side of the Shanghai Dragons as they get ready to bump up their time bank significantly. And 5 minutes and 40 seconds now on Volsky.
And I have to say, so far, Lip looking to be the much better Hanzo player of these maps we've seen. And ending up coming up big, Diem getting that kill, forcing the res like you said. Ends up giving the Shanghai Dragons an insane time bank here. Pretty common on Volskaya. But he gets another pick here, Lip does, onto Striker.
Huge.
And now they can start contesting the point.
They're trying to get an eye on that res, but yet again, they get the hook roll in there on the Choihyobin. The whole hog will finish him off. And it's again, the res is now burned. Moth cannot bring him back into the fight. Does have a faster run back, obviously, as they play right up in front of the point here. Flux will be coming in from Void, picking him up, slamming him back down, looking for a kill on a Smurf. Can't quite find it as he takes a breather, but they get the accretions done. And now Smurf is in such a bad spot. Can't get the hook to come through, and Lip is just popping off in the kill feed in the meantime. Smurf does fall. Choihyobin goes off the side of the map somehow, some way, and the cap is there for the Shanghai Dragons. Much like we saw from the Seoul Dynasty on this very same map, they look alive. They come in with a massive time bank.
Now, let's not forget that a lot of things went wrong for Shock on their defensive A, right? We saw the fast res have to be burned, like you mentioned early on. So that really put them in a tough spot. They kind of got relegated into that side room and weren't able to fight back. You see the big move in from Void. He crushes the rest of the lineup there. The Wrecking Ball swap means that you have to see a late swap back for San Francisco Shock. So they're missing some key ultimates. They're a little bit out of sorts during some of these moments, right? And it's extremely common on 2CP or Assault, whichever your flavor is. Depending on the metas, sometimes the 2 changes, but they end up getting a fast double cap here. It happens all the time. So this is a great start for Shanghai Dragons here, at least time bank wise, and it feels like a huge spring back to life after those first 2 losses. But let's see how this defense goes. This is where, you know, you have massive value coming through for Diem on the Widow, because he's got those defensive sight lines. This is where Lip is going to shine, right? He's come in over Fleta here, the MVP, you mentioned it earlier, starting over MVP on this 3rd map, and he's coming up bigger than Fleta has so far on the Hanzo. This is where the double sniper is going to shine. This is why they picked this map. This defense might bring Shanghai Dragons back into this series. Let's see how good it is.
Well, time will tell. Here we go. For now, Striker looking to start on the Tracer potentially. We'll see if this is just for the sake of scouting, much like Smurf's Wrecking Ball. It seems like he might just be sticking through with it. Wrecking Ball as well. Sleep Dart does connect, as we do have Izayaki now here on this Ana. Violet already taken out, and a hook comes in onto Striker. 2 quick picks, and again, Rez going to be burned to bring Violet back into the fight. He's going to be in a safe position, however, so can continue to take pawn shots and try to build up for that Transcendence, but it's going to be a little bit slower going.
And this is the Ana, by the way, again, coming into the mix here. The Asian style over the Western style to use Ana over Zen. It really hurts your efficacy as a Hanzo. You lose some damage, but they don't need it.
Diem is, he's online. This is so oddly reminiscent of what we saw from Fitz yesterday. This was the point where he, you know, just stuck to the Widowmaker, started popping off, and was coming out on top of Ons, finding more picks than him.
Now, Ons is unseen here, and he can actually take this long flank angle and get behind the squad when the rollout comes through here for the San Francisco Shock. Look at the high ground image here, where you can see him at the top of your screen. He's looping around, and as they start to poke through, he's going to look for some backline kills here, and they do not know that he is there.
His problem, yep, I was about to say, his problem is that stand 1 is sitting right in front of that doorway. So, does just get eliminated. Discord over there onto Void, but will be safe. Just gets a little bit of shielding from the kinetic grasp, but for now, it's a really nice pace set by the Shanghai Dragons.
Yeah, this is already a better time bank, guaranteed.
Just about. Pushing up around the corner. The Flux going to be coming in. They get the pull in on a Striker. The Bionade takes him out. The Flux finishes off Smurf. The kinetic grasp from Choihyobin is not going to mean anything whatsoever. Violet will find 1 on the back end of the fight, but you can expect that LeeJaeGon will just move over, give the res on the Diem. You can already hear it right there off screen.
Because
at the bottom corner of the screen.
Do you remember when everything that had like a Reinhardt Zarya, everyone just called it goats, something goats, right? This is like sniper goats, kind of, okay? What Shanghai's playing, the style they're playing, right? I'm jokingly calling that because everyone was calling everything goats for a while. But they can play the long-range poke, but they can also play aggressively with Izayaki's Ana in these rooms, these choke points with the bio nades, and they're really winning these wars of attrition up close when San Francisco Shock are forced to move forward because of that sniper control from Diem.
They force slip off that high ground. Dragon Strike does roll through, manages to find Smurf. Transcendence will keep everybody else alive, but Stand1 still sitting right on top of them, just waiting for that healing to expire. Hook came through, Hog out, Stand1 takes him down, Striker gone as well. Izayaki, the only one out of the fight right now from the side of the Shanghai Dragons, as Moth will now fall. The heals have been dismantled. Choihyobin, however, takes things into his own hands, finds a double kill, finishing off Void and Lift, and now is the sole occupant of the point. Does get surrounded, however. They can kill him. It would be a very nice stagger, but with the re-arrival of Smurf, it's actually going to be Stand1 getting caught off guard and taken down. Now suddenly the shoe is on the other foot. The Shock have the advantage and can press in onto the point.
LeeJaeGon committing a Valkyrie there too. That's going to be something missing for the potential B defense here. Shanghai Dragons trying to roll back in to go for a last-minute contest. This is a winnable fight, but it's going to be difficult. They're going to have to use their Flux. A lot of tools required.
Second tick now comes in, Flux is out from Void. On's eliminated, Lip finds a headshot, Diem follows up on the Choihyobin. The res is in onto Izayaki, putting him back into the fray. A 5v4 at the moment here, with the side of the Shanghai Dragons, their advantage. Manic Grasp will absorb a lot of that whole Hog. Sleep starts connecting in, Accretion not going to connect. You can see just taking down that Immortality field as Smurf does manage to finish off Diem on the back end of the fight. Stand1 just now respawning, goes back over onto the Roadhog, knows that the point A cap is coming through, knows that it's inevitable. So just goes and gets ready on that primary pick of the Hog for the next attack now on point B.
Yeah, this is going to be Shanghai Dragons having to really hunker down and try to play sightlines alone, I think, and make sure that San Francisco Shock doesn't actually get any point presence here, because Violet on Batiste can give them a really strong, elongated fight. They're going to have the Valkyrie. The Immortality field is just so valuable here.
Pull in on the Void, he just gets absolutely evaporated by the members of the San Francisco Shock. That is a huge opening now for them as they push their way forward. Ons finds a headshot onto Izayaki as well. LeeJaeGon with the Valkyrie, can he find a res? Dragon Strike rolls in across the point. Doesn't find much damage, doesn't find any kills. Striker takes out Diem. Whole Hog now pulled in here for Smurf, gets the corner shot onto Izayaki, finishing him off. And again, the Ana going to be out of the fight, but Izayaki's going to be rezzing pretty shortly, and he almost has that nano boost to try to keep the rest of the team alive. With the Sonic Arrow, takes down Violet. Ons finds a headshot onto Void. There's no front line now for the side of the Shanghai Dragons, and LeeJaeGon is dead. Izayaki going to be running his way back in, but he doesn't have a great nano boost target. Has to throw it out onto Lip to try to keep him alive, but it's not going to be enough. Dragon Strike now rolling through. Pile Driver barely avoids that as Violet takes a nap on the backside of the point. Pop up over the top. Ons looks for a shot. Can't quite get the connection onto Diem, who trades back just a bit of damage onto him. LeeJaeGon now on the Lucio, looking to buy some time for the rest of the team to re-arrive. I think they're on the Void. The neck going to be broken as Striker finds LeeJaeGon. Looks for a little bit more. Bionade comes out. Lip finds one. Lip going to be taken down.
Insane.
Now Izayaki going to be gone. Roll through onto the point here from Stand1. Does get stunned up. Diem finds the headshot onto Ons. Pile Driver comes in, and the Flux matches. Stand1 slam back down to the ground. The Flux will finish him off. They finally clear the point. And it's a minute and 22 seconds on the finish here for the San Francisco Shock.
This is where things can start to go wrong when you have a 3-minute time bank, you know, for Shanghai Dragons. I'm not trying to say that they're the disadvantage going into this one by any means, because that is the opposite of the case, right? They've got a 3:24 time bank advantage on the clock, but things can slip away from you very quickly on Assault. If San Francisco Shock have a really nice push here, a double cap, something like that, that can get into your head mentally. You're down 0-2 in a series like this. But you know, you and I were talking about it in the break, and I think you've even mentioned it briefly earlier on the broadcast as well, is Shanghai Dragons have had a lot of reverse sweeps in their time. They've had a lot of big comebacks. They've had a lot of really close series. You know, when you think about the finals they had with Seoul Dynasty, obviously the comeback that happened there, it was actually them who took a very early lead against San Francisco Shock in that Stage 3 finals, and they denied the reverse sweep of San Francisco Shock. They've played a lot of close series. They've played a lot of tense games. They've been on a lot of match points, you know, over the last 2 years. Obviously, we won't talk too much about the 2018 stands on the record, but over the course of time, and all these players too, all the backgrounds they've been on, Runaway, right, Kongdu Panthera, these players have seen hard times, they've seen hard series. They can bring this back. It's going to have to start with one more solid defense here on A. Their previous one was pretty good. really hurt that time bank. If they could do it one more time, they might be able to snatch this series back.
They really need to. You know, getting the full hold here in the extra rounds pretty much sets up the Shanghai Dragons for another map played, but that is a catastrophic start. Rez has to be burned off the bat. Stand one very nicely does equalize, taking down Choihyobin, but now they lose out on LeeJaeGon. A lot of their healing power eliminated. Ons strikes yet again. Headshot going through, takes down Void. Diem tries to drag this back into the Dragons' favor by finding Violet. A little bit of damage there onto Ons now. Lip rejoining with the Storm Arrows will get rid of Striker, but Smurf is there, and that is going to be point A.
This is what I'm talking about.
Over to the Shock.
Things fall apart. It's never over till it's over. You may have a 3-minute time bank advantage, but all it takes is one great fight, and San Francisco Shock is suddenly back in this map. They absolutely have the ability to come in here, take a strong fight, get another early pick, and ruin the Shanghai Dragons' defense. Let's take a look at Ons again here. Getting the pick onto LeeJaeGon at the start, that is exactly what you want if you're going to commit into a fight. He gets Void afterwards. There's no res potential, and he's just got total control. Where is Stand 1 even going here?
He doesn't know. Stand 1 doesn't know, but all I know is that we're back in, and it's deja vu. Lip taken down off the bat. Ons finding that headshot, and the res has to be used. So LeeJaeGon going to be without that for a considerable amount of time. Choihyobin pushing forward. Falls quite low. They look for the finish. The accretion will find it. Res now burned from Moth. Puts Striker back into the mix, but he will very quickly be taken down. 18 seconds now remaining for the side of the San Francisco Shock. Choihyobin has to swap over onto the Wrecking Ball, but with the Hog, highly unlikely that he can get anywhere near this point. You can see he's already chunked out to about half HP and has 6 seconds to try to get the tag.
Yeah, Izayaki's going to have nano boost too. I mean, not that it matters. They can sleep. They just blow him up before he gets to touch. I mean, there's just no way that was going to happen.
Well, now we're in a position, Wolf, where, I mean, obviously the Shock could very well just defend point A, get the victory off the bat. But Shanghai Dragons, they need a single tick. If they can't make that happen and they get the cap on A, we could just have a draw and then go into a map 4 from there.
That's right. You know, if you haven't been watching most Overwatch League this season, it's first to 3. It's not like our old system where a draw would mean that San Francisco Shock would win the series because Shanghai couldn't win enough maps to bring it to a 5th map. So that's no longer the case. If you were like, if you didn't watch most of the season, but you're like, you know what, Grand Finals on, I'm gonna check that out. That's kind of a big change.
I only know coin flip rules.
Big change, but yeah, it's we would just go to a 4th map in that case. It's first to 3 wins. That's what the first to 3 at the top means. And Shanghai Dragons here on definitely in position to bring the series back, right? 4:46 on the clock, and that's because they had an insanely dominant first cap into double cap on Volskaya on the first attack run. And, you know, obviously things don't always repeat. History doesn't always repeat itself, but they're poised to take the San Francisco Shock, though, if they have a few good defenses here, start to snowball an ult lead. Ons has sightline advantage. Maybe it all ends here. This is extremely tense still for the Shanghai Dragons. You know, as an isolated map alone, despite the advantages they have, you're sure if it was a 0-0 scoreline, you'd be thinking, well, they're probably not worried, but 0-2, different story.
Let's see how they engineer this push. Their very nice time bank. Going out on a time bank like this would just be catastrophic, I would imagine.
Definitely memorable.
Mental. Yeah. And you have to keep in mind that whichever team loses this is going to be playing again later on today. So you don't get that much of a reprieve here.
No, you really don't.
Overwatch action. Ooh, Striker falling low, almost taken down. You can see Stand 1 dropping off that high ground. Ons playing very far back, in between point A and B. Just looking for this very unique angle.
Diem looks like he almost wants to go into the center. That's extremely risky with where Smurf and Choihyobin are. And he just gets taken out.
Haven't been able to see quite where the body is at. Smurf barely surviving, down to double-digit HP there. Does get to take a breather, does get the healing received from Violet. Izayaki, nearly with the Transcendence up, now has that ready to roll. As they get ready for the ensuing fight. Lip going to be taken down, however. Striker finishes him off with Storm Arrows.
What is this trance?
The trance has been used. Violet now uses his own, so neither Zenyatta will have one for the fluxes that will eventually follow up, but that was a very questionable use of the ultimate there from Izayaki.
I mean, a lot of people watching this play wondering, why is Wolf seem so down on Shanghai Dragons? They have a 4:46 time bank. And he was been down on it. Even he was saying Shock could come back earlier, but Shanghai had all the advantages. Sure, they're down on 2, but why would Wolf say that? I've cast a lot of Overwatch in my time. I've commentated esports for 10 years, and I can tell you, it's not over till it's over. And Shanghai Dragons are not in the right headspace right now. And this is starting to look rough. Mons has the advantage in terms of ult here too. He could just go ahead and wall hack his way to sightline advantage.
Right now, just the Valkyrie whole hog nearly up.
There it is.
Strike as well potentially create some space, but as you were talking about, Infrasight will come up for Ons. And he's already such a threat when he can't literally see through walls, but now he can literally see through walls.
Yeah. Shanghai's just playing it slow. There's a pick.
Okay. Yeah, quick pop out around the doorway. Diem finds Striker. Looks to deny the res. Can't quite get it. Key angle there from Moth to bring him back into the fight. Stand one. Does get taken down by the Flux. Now Ons manages to get the better of Diem. Looks for a little bit more. The dink goes through on the Void. Choihyobin does manage to claim the final blow. Just like that, more than half the time has been taken away from Shanghai. 2 minutes remaining, and they have yet to set foot on point A.
They have, I mean, they have ults here coming online that aren't great for cracking open a sniper point. I mean, that should be happening. Zen shouldn't be getting these free headshot kills. Violet should not be allowed to do that. He's going to have his trance first. This map is slipping away from the Shanghai Dragons. The series is slipping away from the Shanghai Dragons. They need a critical pick here. They need an opening kill from Diem, but he can't find those angles just yet. They're trying to give him some space right now. This is his chance. This is his time. 90 seconds on the clock. Well, you're not going to the finals, not yet.
Infrasight rolling here for Diem, just trying to keep track of Ons. Everybody right now on the side of San Francisco piling into the garage on the side of the point. Whole hog is available. If Stand 1 could get in there, it would absolutely rip people to shreds. Transcendence going to be used early from Violet. Jump up over the top. Ons looks for the headshot. Can't quite find it. Lip is the one to strike him down. It's the arrow through the Widowmaker. Follows up onto Violet. Now Smurf going to be gone to the whole hog. Striker finds one, but he needs a hell of a lot more than that if they want to turn this around. And it looks like that will just be point A, going the way of the Shanghai Dragons. It took the majority of their time bank. There's still a draw now on the line for them, but they want that win. They need to get this cap.
Yeah, well, that means the series does go on. Will not end here. Guaranteed. So at least they can sigh a breath of relief there. But as you say, yes, they need to bring this series back. They need a win on the board. This is their map pick. Arguably their best map for this meta with the players they have in. Void going to look for a little bit of pressure here on the point to force a rotation.
Corner. Trade out on both of the Hanzos. Or rather, Lip finds one, then gets taken down. Rez does come in. Moth puts Violet back into the fray, and Striker starts doing some serious work. The tank line completely broken down. Shanghai Dragons just have to pull back, reset. Unlike the Shock, they have time to do that.
So tense right now. The Shock absolutely just sitting pretty here on the point. They have all the advantages in the world. Shanghai Dragons have to come to them. They don't have great ults to engage. They don't have sightline advantage. Diem's going to have his ultimate here. That's all they're going to have. I mean, maybe he can get a flank kill. Maybe he can pop off on and kill Violet. Maybe he can kill Ons again on a flank. Maybe that's how Shanghai puts the win on the board. But otherwise, Shock are looking to tie this one up, this map alone.
Striker poking out around the corner, takes a shot, has the pocket healing coming through from Moth. Still going to be holding on to a Valkyrie. LeeJaeGon takes to the skies with one of his own. Lip falling low. This corridor almost eliminates him. Smurf cheating up around the corner, breaks down the barrier, gets the assassination onto Void. However, Stand 1 finds on. Striker is eliminated. No DPS now in the fight for the side of the Shock. They're going to have to wait to res back into this naturally in the spawn room. Smurf finds one, but they're not on the point are the Shock, so the Shanghai Dragons will actually be able to barely scoop this map victory out from underneath of the Shock. They had the res coming in, the pick on the back end of the fight, but they just don't play the point in all of the chaos. And Shanghai Dragons do keep this series going, not with a draw, but with a map win on the board. 2-1 the scoreline.
It was a really hard-fought win. I mean, if you saw, if you're watching, you saw the evolution of that time bank, how low it went, how close it was when it didn't have to be on their map pick. I mean, this is Diem we're talking about, Widowmaker back-to-back champion in the 1v1 challenges, a player who, with Ding and the Widow Pharah meta, brought them to a stage title last year, and yet still, he wasn't able to make a dent in Ons in those moments where they really needed to. their time bank is what saved them. Even though they barely were able to do it, if they didn't have that much time on the clock, we'd be looking at a 3-0. We'd be going to winner's interview here with the San Francisco Shock right now, so they could thank their lucky stars that first attack went so well.
Yeah, but now they need to replicate that first attack and then stretch it across, 2 more maps if they want to take this series and pull off the reverse sweep. Again, a dangerous prospect to be going up against the San Francisco Shock when they're on match point, when it is their map pick. So
let's take a look at this touch, by the way.
Extremely risky.
You can see it's, or rather lack thereof. Choihyobin just a little bit too late to touch. I think he thought that Moth was going to get in there with the Valkyrie first, but wasn't able to get on the point. That was a pretty greedy play by the Shock to try to stagger, touch that early on, because they definitely could have been touching, but they wanted to maintain enough members on the point so they could actually take the win, or rather the draw, and not the loss. So that's why they were playing this greedily, but at the end of the day, they're a little bit off on their stagger timing on touching the point to force those overtimes, and Choihyobin probably going to be feeling a little bit rough about that one, but it's okay. Still up 2-0, still in match point.
Alrighty, well guys, this is the special announcement that you've been waiting for as the series goes on. We're going to need a little bit of energy, and that's why Coke Energy is going to be rewarding, I can talk, it's my job, rewarding all viewers for the next hour by boosting you with 3x Overwatch League tokens when you watch on overwatchleague.com and on the app. So now you guys can load up, get your all-star skins even faster, and of course, try some Coke Energy. Comes in 4 delicious flavors. Coke Energy, 0 sugar, cherry, and cherry 0 sugar. So it's about the same amount of caffeine in that can than in a 12-ounce cup of drip coffee. So get fueled up because it's going to be a long night of Overwatch. I wish you and I, Wolf, could do that, but I don't think we have Coke Energy in Korea. But that's fine. You guys enjoy it on our behalfs.
Please do.
But that being said, we go deeper into this series. 2-1 the scoreline. Shock still at match point, but Shanghai looking to bring it back. We will be back with that next map to see if they can do it in just a few minutes, so do not go anywhere.
The Overwatch League is brought to you by T-Mobile. Switch today and rank up to America's largest 5G network, T-Mobile.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Spawn Room. I'm Golden Boy, and it's time to play Overwatch Hero Trivia. I hope you're ready, because here's your question. Effie Oladele, the designer of Orisa, built a resume of impressive achievements in robotics and artificial intelligence by this young age. A, 11, B, 9, C, 10. The answer? A, 11. So much more to come, though, from the Spawn Room and more from the Overwatch League 2020 Grand Finals coming right up.
Alrighty, we are back and we go deeper into the series. 2-1 the scoreline here. San Francisco Shock still do lead, but the Shanghai Dragons do not go down without a fight. They scrape a win by on Volskaya Industries, and now they have to play on the Shock's first map pick here in this set, which is going to be Watch Point Gibraltar.
That's right. And, you know, I think both teams would probably have wanted to go to this map. Of the maps available, Havana, Dorado are the other two in the pool. This is a map that plays to both of the team's sniper strengths, and that's kind of been the revolving matchup here in this first of 3 series. And, you know, arguably you could say that there's highs and lows on both sides, you know. It's been up and down, but I think he's overall been more consistent. Shanghai Dragons, again, steamrolling their way to that insane time bank is what allowed them to have so many extra chances, you know, on Volskaya to actually bring us to this 2-1 scoreline. So I think this is a good map pick for Shock. I think Shanghai would have taken it here as well, taken us to here as well if it were their map pick. But I still favor the Shock for this based on what we've seen in this series so far. No subs. Lip and Diem versus Hanzo Striker. Again, Lip definitely being an upgrade in terms of the Hanzo performance so far today.
Ready for battle.
As a reminder, our IBM match point, we are on match point here still for the San Francisco Shock. 1 win away from going to their second grand finals back-to-back it would be for this team. And, you know, a lot of people talking about the fact that in this top 4 we have a lot of potential repeat winners for the first time in Overwatch League. We'd have quite a lot of them if the San Francisco Shock are able to take it.
Yes, that's certainly true. But first now on the defense, and it's just more of the same here for the Shock. They found what works, and it's been looking pretty good overall. So no alterations to the composition for them, nor the roster. It'll still be Smurf rocking the Roadhog. Lip almost dead off the bat. That's Violet for you.
Yep.
Gets the teleport across, and then we'll just swap back over onto the Hanzo.
Yeah, no crazy Genji from DM. He has played it a few times in his career, but we don't like to talk about those times. Cart rolling here. San Francisco Shock just going to play around Discord Orb and look to drop down for the break on the point once it gets close enough to where that's possible. As you can see, Striker drops down now. And Shanghai Dragons actually playing back around DM and not trying to push the cart with the majority of their squad, knowing those storm arrows are going to be there to greet them. They're going to match the Zen again. Izayaki not playing the Ana because you can't really force Shock to come to you on this map.
All right, well, Hanzo kills Widowmaker, I suppose. Rez is there first for Moth. LeeJaeGon just a little bit after that one, but Violet finds the punish, getting rid of Lip, further limiting the damage output of the Shanghai Dragons. And for now, the cart is going to be halted right here at the exit of that underpass. And getting back to a position to get that moving again can prove to be very, very difficult, especially when Ans does that.
Yeah. You know, I mean, this is going to be a pretty nasty situation for the Shanghai Dragons now. Ans has control of this high ground here, and the center is controlled by both Violet and Striker. I mean, this is just, it's like TF2, like you're trying. You're just trying to shoot random arrows out. But look, right now, Shanghai Dragons in a position where they can push up to the high ground, but they're met by storm arrows. If you come in directly like this, then you're just going to get blown up. You have to win the chip battle.
Yeah, I mean, not only that, it's also the crossfire that's been set up. They have Striker on this high ground. They, you know, have had Ons down below sitting in the server room, just providing that constant crossfire. So if somebody pokes out like Void, who tries to go for an accretion stun, they just get ripped to shreds. So it's a really great showing of positioning here for the side of the Shock thus far on this defense. Now stand 1 going to be eliminated. Violet takes him out. Dragon Strike going to be tossed, going straight through, and LeeJaeGon's got nowhere to go, so they lose out on the Mercy. And now have to reset and go again. That being said, Dragons stacking up ultimates. Shock a little bit further behind from getting 5 online.
But this is not an ult meta, you know? It's a pick-based meta. It's a sniper meta. You know, hooks. Yeah. It's based on getting insta-kills like this. So ultimates, less important here, and Shock still have a few of their own, right? So they have the longevity of the trance. They have, obviously, a flux to come through. They can buy so much time. Shanghai just need to start getting kills. I mean, this is the most important ult, is DM's Infrasight here to try to get a kill.
Poking out around the corner, looking for Striker, swaps over the storm arrows, but can't even get a single connection. That being said, Izayaki finds Violet, taking him out. Goes a little bit low under pressure, so pops a Transcendence. Whole Hog comes through, Choihyobin will fall. Rez comes out onto Violet, but now Moth will die, costing his life to try to bring his comrade back into the fray. Pushing up now on a Void, just looking to take down the enemy Sigma. You can see the pull back there from Smurf, doesn't want to overstep. Cart has now moved up just in front of point A as Choihyobin re-arrives on the Wrecking Ball. Stand 1 has the hook ready to go, is waiting for his opportunity. A striker is in behind, gets the kill on the Lip, follows up now on the LeeJaeGon, who had just moments before brought Lip back into the fight. Stand 1 does finish him off, but now Moth gets Choihyobin, that big hanky hamster, back into the break here for the side of the Shock. But given that it's just him, it's just Smurf, they will fall. Diem, it's a bit of a shooting gallery for him, takes him out, but the time bank is significantly weaker than you would like to see if you're Shanghai Dragons fans. Just 2 minutes and 40 seconds now here.
I feel like Shanghai in this series is hanging from the last thread that's also on a knife's edge.
Yeah.
And it's also like the last straw also. But they do force their way through. Oh, Lip gets picked here. That's not great.
Good pullback there from LeeJaeGon, does keep himself safe from the follow-up from Striker. Flux from Void, doesn't find too much, doesn't get too much damage out. Nons gets another headshot now onto LeeJaeGon. The card for now is still going to continue to inch forward, but that high ground control is there for the San Francisco Shock. They can drop down onto the cart and stop it right in its tracks. Hans as well, finding yet another hit, takes down Diem. He's trying to find Izayaki, he's being a little bit more elusive. Does get body tagged, and now he's the lone one on the cart. He still pops the Transcendence, has the tank to back him up here. Looks to escort them forward as they try to get the kill here on the Choihyobin. They do manage to do so. Is that going to be enough for them to try to finish the point B?
Lip swaps the
Choihyobin
Tracer.
is a ways away from Flux, so this might not be that punish.
Yeah, Lip swaps the Tracer, so he's back on the point here, and I think that the Shanghai Dragons can just force this through, and now the timing is starting to be a little bit more manageable. Now it's starting to feel like this map could be finished for sure for the Dragons. Hog coming through.
Okay, well, Stand 1 not going to be able to retreat, can't take a breather, so will just die. Rez is out, so not too much time lost here, but that cooldown could be significant. Lip now, swap it is here on the Tracer, building up towards that Pulse Bomb, 30% left to go.
Yeah, he's sticking
Trying to
with
go
it.
for some backline assassinations.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly quite strong when you're splitting up like this, but Striker does get that pick there. Storm Arrow blows up Diem. But I like the split here for the San Francisco Shock, as long as they can deal with the Tracer. High ground control here, but also point presence as well.
Tagged up there. Pulse Bomb does go out, manages to find Smurf, but not before he cuts down 2 people with the whole Hog. And with Void getting ready to die on the back end, this is going to have to be a full reset here for the Shanghai Dragons. Curious to see if Lip swaps, and he does.
This is how Seoul likes to play this map, right? They have their snipers on the high ground on one end, and then they have their tanks on the low ground controlling the point. So if you try to pressure the tank, you find yourself exposed to sniper line of sight, right? The double snipers up here on top, plus the Sigma. If you try to control the point, you get hooked, so you're kind of in this nasty crossfire if you're the Shanghai Dragons that you have to somehow try to close the gap on. Getting the high ground is so difficult. This pick definitely going to help start the push.
Crucial kill. The res is there. Now Void will fall in such a position that it's going to be difficult for LeeJaeGon to try to bring him back in. Izayaki pops the Transcendence. Diem finds one. Use that Transcendence to go ahead and ensure that Void can come back into the fight, but now the Flux comes through and there's not enough healing to keep Stand 1 alive. Choihyobin just finds that kill and the cart remains exactly where it has been.
Yeah, I mean, they're so close yet so far. Stand 1 swapping because they want to keep this momentum because they have the Shock kind of pinned down on the ground. That's a nice pick from Diem, and they want to keep this momentum going, so Stand 1's going to try to roll his way back in so they can push that forward, and it's working.
Fantastic pop shot. They find 3 on the Flux. Violent dead on arrival to the ground. Striker now taken down in the follow-up. Choihyobin crumbles as well. A minute remaining as they widely get a wipe on the San Francisco Shock. Start moving forward. We'll see what Shock can do to try to stop this. Choihyobin's going to be swapping over onto the Wrecking Ball. Instantly takes quite a bit of damage. The Discord Orb's doing wonders for them, and Moth will not be able to survive with that Lucio. Great focus fire coming in now here for the side of the Shanghai Dragons, and Diem up close and personal gets the headshot dink onto Smurf to finish him off with a little bit of help from Lip as well. Dragon Strike going to be tossed out here onto the cart, looking to zone them back. Gets a smattering of damage in onto Choihyobin, who is now all on its lonesome. He's trying to spin around like a madman as long as he possibly can to further delay this cart push. It looks like Shanghai Dragons will be able to get across the finish line. 0.9 meters now left to go as a recall comes in from Striker. He pushes back up over onto the cart. Moth re-arriving. They get shoved away. 0.24 meters now remaining. The minefield dropped in by Stand 1. The kills start flying through for Diem up on the high ground. No one able to contest the Widowmaker here at the moment. And they will barely not be taken into overtime. 3.5 seconds remaining. Shanghai Dragons do barely manage to finish Watch Point Gibraltar.
And they really did, I feel like, understand how to break through the Shock's composition. Eventually, we saw a few picks come through. It was traded. The Shock had to drop down from the high ground and contest the point with more of the full squad. And then that was a moment where Shanghai, it was an even trade, but they had Stand 1 come back through on the Wrecking Ball, and that was the first time Diem really had sight with Lip on the high ground. They took that high ground away from the Shock, and then they just kept consistently getting kills. They did not flounder, they did not make any mistakes. Once they had that win condition in their sights, once they had the high ground taken away, and the cart wasn't just split between a Hog and Widow Hanzo high ground there with Choihyobin on the Sigma, obviously, that's when Shanghai could just force these fights on their terms and just basically shoot fish in a barrel as the cart rolled through. And that was really well played by them. You can see there's this one moment where the back is broken of the Shock, which is when Diem and Lip get up on that high ground. And they really played to that extremely well. This is going to be way back earlier. Not entirely sure what this replay is, but
the very start, I imagine it's
the trade.
The double, the exchange as the arrows pass through each other, or pass by each other there in the air.
Well, Shanghai Dragons, they have a win condition here if they can have a solid defense. Same compositions, but, you know, I talked about the Asian Ana here. The Ana's coming out, so we shall see if Izayaki can force some up-close and personal fights here. They're going to try to close the gap and try to look for some bio-nade fights like we saw in Volskaya. Much harder to pull off here, you know, especially at the early part of the map. Once we get down to the car wash, things will change.
Well, already an early pick. And Diem misses the headshot, misses the follow-up. He's trying to get Striker, but Striker's right there. Puts an arrow through his skull. The res used now by LeeJaeGon to bring Lip back into the fight. So it's going to be a very nice delay on that Widowmaker. A lot of pressure alleviated here for the San Francisco Shock. That being said, Shanghai, they push the issue. They move up against the members of the Shock. They find two, but the cart has moved up the ramp here. Now out of the car wash, and Smurf finds yet another pick. Pull in over onto the side, looking for the finish onto Choihyobin. Diem re-arriving, manages to find the headshot to equalize that. Makes it a good play, but they can't play the cart right now.
Yeah, they need to, though, or they're going to lose control of this. Nice hook from Stand 1. Finally starting to find his footing.
Yeah, and with that res coming out, Smurf was left on his lonesome over by the cart, so they find that pick. Stand 1 still here, still taking names, finds both of the supports. Drop downs there for Striker, just looking to chip away, get any kills that he possibly can. Won't be able to find one. But a good amount of distance has already built up here for the San Francisco Shock. So despite the stop by Dragons, this is not time to panic for the Shock fans.
Oh, certainly. Now, Izayaki's bio-nades have made this a lot easier. You know, a lot of these really aggressive fights we're seeing everyone collapse onto Stand 1. He gets bio-naded, he can take a breather. He's lived so long, and if you overcommit there, you're going to get bio-nade, you're going to get purple, you're going to be in big trouble. Not in this case.
Strike for strike coming through from the Hanzo. Striker does manage to find one as Izayaki gets taken out, but Stand 1 with the help of the nano boost before Izayaki to die picks up an answering kill onto Smurf. Venom mine takes down Moth. Must have just kind of flitted past that one while low HP. Does find that kill, but Stand 1 now going to be eliminated. The Discord orbs here from Twilight still doing wonders for the DPS members on the side of the Shock that just chunked out that Roadhog time and time again. Choihyobin now occupies the high ground. Diem in a rough position. Grapples to the side just to get out of line of sight here. Keeps himself alive, but can he find some crucial picks, much like we saw at the end of their push? Flux comes through. Striker avoids it. Sleep Dart connects. Barrier comes out to try to keep him protected. He will be allowed to wake back up and go straight back on the offensive.
He's going to force his way forward here. But the cart is halted. They can actually operate around this room here with Ana. Insane throughput on the healing. And I think the Shock are going to have to regroup a little bit here.
Yeah, 2 HP there for Lip. Does manage to pick up that mega package at the server room. The cart right now is still advancing forward. Somebody from the side of Shanghai has to touch. It's going to be Stand 1, but it does not last very long as he hits the ground. They do manage to finish him off. Moth comes in with a res, bringing Smurf back in. Stand 1 back into the fight as well. The DPS do it from the side of the Shanghai Dragons. Fight both of the supports. The whole hog now rolling for Stand 1. Looking to shove them back. Turns away from the Sigma for a bit, trying to mitigate the amount of shielding that he'll receive off the kinetic grasp. You see Choi has to peel back. Now it's 50 seconds remaining. There's a couple meters left to go. But Shanghai, can they actually pull off this full hold?
They could steal this map away for sure. They have a nano boost, and that's going to be so much longevity here for Stand 1. And he's really trading out so well in all of these fights. Striker is actually the hero here for the Shock. He's doing so much damage. He's getting stray picks even when they're down on members. He's playing so insanely well. I think he's their best hope of bringing this A push through.
Push everybody around the corner looking for Stand 1. Nano boost invested from Izayaki. He takes an arrow, has to peel back. Stand 1 still alive, but now Striker finds a headshot, eliminating Lip. Rez does come through, however. LeeJaeGon bringing him back, and the infra side is rolling, so they see all of the movements here. Sleep guard on the Choi, gets woken back up. Violet pops the Transcendence to try to keep everybody else alive as the card continues to press forward. Void gets eliminated. Hook not going to connect here from Smurf, who nearly has a whole hog, and Choihyobin still holding on to a Flux. Nutrition does not connect. The Flux starts coming through. Lip pulls back around the corner, trying to keep himself protected. The Flux kills Izayaki. The res is there from Moth, bring Violet back into the fight. The whole hog just shoving people away from the card as best as they possibly can. But Sam, when it comes back in, gets the assassination. Can they actually make it happen? Diem finds Moth. The res is there on the Izayaki. Violet finds two, but then gets taken down by the Bionade. Void will finish off Striker. The OT is going to start bleeding away. If they can just get rid of Choihyobin, they do so. No one can tag, and that is the Shanghai Dragons taking us to a map 5 with a full hold on Watchpoint Gibraltar.
Bringing it all the way back. Game 5. And Shanghai Dragons control this point. The Ana making the big difference here in terms of setting up that extra healing output, making sure that Stand 1 could survive the test of time here through all the pressure that's put on him, all the poke. And I gotta say, insane healing output here coming through on the side of the Shanghai Dragons. Izayaki keeps him alive, and that was Stand 1's best hog game we've seen of these 4 maps.
It absolutely was, but here we go, ladies and gentlemen. This has turned into the series that we were so hungry for. A map 5 between the San Francisco Shock and the Shanghai Dragons to determine who the first team will be in the grand finals tomorrow. Everything on the line. One more round of control to decide it all. It's Shock's map pick.
Coca-Cola is the official refreshment of the Overwatch League.
Golden Boy back in the spawn room, sharing with you some of the unbelievable opportunities planned for tomorrow when you tune in to the 2020 Grand Finals. First, want to make your way right here in the spawn room? Use the hashtag #CheckMeOWL and OWL2020 to post on our Grand Finals social wall, and maybe, just maybe, we'll read your post on the show. Then, thanks to our friends at Cheez It Grooves and Pringles Wavy, send a tweet using @Overwatch League and one of these Crunch Time Cam hashtags to get instant, real-time photos of the two teams in action tweeted right back at you. Remember to keep tweeting throughout the grand finals so you can get even more behind-the-scenes pics. And finally, during the match, we literally want to hear you cheer and share with the world your Overwatch League pride. Be a part of the grand finals broadcast like never before by going to overwatchleague.com/react and look for the Hear Me Cheer icon. I want to hear you. That's it from me. More from the Overwatch League 2020 Grand Finals coming right up.
And we are back, ladies and gentlemen. Game 5 now on the horizon. The San Francisco Shock could not get a victory on their map pick of Watchpoint Gibraltar. And the Shanghai Dragons, they came out victorious, so they keep this series going. They keep their hopes alive of being the first team to qualify for the grand final tomorrow.
I mean, this is the series that everybody wanted. This is the series that we were hoping for, right? And if you're a Shock fan, it's the series that we had yesterday in some ways, right? You know, we're starting to see a big comeback here coming through for the Shanghai Dragons. It feels like that reverse sweep is possible. Now, yesterday, obviously, Shanghai Dragons were able, or excuse me, Seoul Dynasty were unable to win that final map. San Francisco Shock actually closing it out at the end of the day. History may repeat itself here again in this first series of tonight. But I gotta say, I mean, I think the big compositional changes here, the big main changes we've seen are Lip to Hanzo, obviously playing a lot better than Fleta was early on. And we're seeing Izayaki on the Ana, which allows Shanghai Dragons to play their more aggressive forward Roadhog style. When they were playing the Zen Roadhog, it didn't work out when they tried to put Stan one of these forward positions. Didn't have the healing to keep him alive, couldn't keep him up and survivable, so he looked kind of foolish with some of the flanks he was taking. Now you can see them playing their style. They're playing the the APAC Ana style, and it's working quite well.
It really is. I mean, it's a major comeback here for the side of the Shanghai Dragons, and whenever we get to a Game 5 in a high-caliber match like this, I just don't care anymore. I don't care who is victorious. I don't care who walks away. I never did. I just want good Overwatch, and we finally got that. It was looking like this was going to be, a 3-0 blowout at the hands of the San Francisco Shock. I'm just grateful that Shanghai has been able to bring us back in for this much more action. So it's absolutely wonderful to see. But there are going to be some changes for the final map, obviously.
Yeah, the major one here going to be Fleta is back in, so he's subbing in for Lip. It's going to be a Fleta Diem combo, just like the early part of the series. Now, this does scream that we're moving away from Sombra compositions for Control. So that's something that, if you're a Shanghai fan, you probably feel a little bit uneasy about because they're great at Sombra. It's part of what's given them so much success all season long is Lip Sombra. But it didn't work out on Oasis, our first map of the series. It ended up kind of falling flat. So I think a lot of people probably sighing relief on the other side of things that Lip is out, and we are probably going to see a more standard Roadhog-oriented composition here with snipers, the Widow and Hanzo, very likely. So I think that's what's to be expected. The other kind of odd thing substitution-wise here is we don't have Super returning in after he had a great start, to the series on the Roadhog. I thought we might see him come back in here for this final map.
Well, he does not. They're sticking with the same comp that we saw them play on Oasis. But while we allow for Fleta to get set up, maybe just a few of our, few of the fans out there haven't been paying attention. They don't know who Fleta is. They say, who is this guy? How did he win League MVP? Well, watch this, and you'll find out.
사실 내 팀이라고 해서 그렇게 뭔가 더 이겨야 된다, 더 해야 된다 하면은 사실 실수가 더 많이 나온다고 생각을 해서 사실 그런 건 없고요. 그냥 모든 경기에 다 똑같이 그냥 저희가 할 거에만 집중을 하는 편입니다. 네, 제 이름은 이제 김병선이고요. 나이는 22살이고 이제 남양주라는 곳에서 왔는데 이제 오버워치를 시작하게 된 계기는 이제 그때가 고등학교 3학년 이제 플래시럭스라는 그런 에이펙스라는 그때 경기 거기 1시드권을 가지고 있는 그런 팀이 있어서 거기서 한번 해보고 싶어서 그때부터 이제 프로를 하기로 마음을 먹었던 것 같아요. 이게 이제 서울 다이너스트라는 팀에 제가 좀 저희 플래시럭스 코치님이 당시 그때 서울 다이너스트 때 좀 얘기를 해서 이제 테스트를 볼 수 있겠냐라고 한 후 제가 이제 가서 테스트를 봤거든요. 잘 달렸다고 생각을 했는데 후반에 가서는 되게 다들 지치기도 했고 좀 다른 이유도 있고 해서 경기가 잘 풀리지 않아가지고 2018년에는 좀 아쉬웠고 또 그 다음 년도 2019년에는 좀
Seoul Dynasty, they need to get the payload, they need to win this fight, and they're not doing it. And Seoul Dynasty, their season is over. A win for the Gladiators. The Dynasty is not starting this year.
또 새로운 팀원들하고 또 합을 맞추면서 출발은 좋다고 생각을 했는데 그때도 마지막에
And that's it. The Hongzhou Spark will advance and Seoul Dynasty is done.
둘 다 2018-2019 시즌에는 둘 다 좀 처음에 시작은 좋았지만 마무리가 좀 안 좋았던 것 같아요. 그렇게 하다 보니까 그냥 팀에 오게 된 것 같아요. 상하이에. 일단 상하이가 마음에 든 점은 당연히 뭐 이런 뭔가 지원 같은 것도 있고 당연히 이제 첫 순위로 봐야 되는 게 같이 할 팀원들이 나와 같이 잘 할 수 있는 그런 팀원들인가를 봤는데 상하이는 충분히 그럴 수 있다고 생각을 해서 왔던 것 같아요. 그런 걸 어필을 하는 편인 것 같아요. 원래 자기 걸 어필하고 자기 걸 자기가 원하는 대로 플레이했을 때 좀 게임이 잘 풀린다고 생각을 하는데 그때는 제가 그러지 못해서 좀 더 그게 좀 아쉬웠던 것 같아요. 서울 때는.
You are the MVP of the season.
MVP요? 그거는 이제 제가 MVP를 받든 안 받든 당연히 그럴 생각이었고요. 사실 MVP는 이제 저 개인인 거지만 이제 팀의 우승은 나머지가 다 행복할 수 있는 거기 때문에 저는 그게 당연히 우선이라고 생각을 하고 지금도 그렇게 할 수 있도록 열심히 다들 하고 있습니다.
The headshot after headshot after headshot.
이제 뭐 저희가 누구랑 경기를 한다거나 이럴 때 저희 팀을 이제 거의 창과 방패라고 하면 거의 창으로 표현을 하시는데
I do not believe what we have just witnessed. The Shanghai Dragons are elite.
근데 저희가 아무래도 팀이 되게 공격적인 것도 잘하고 그런 조합도 잘하기 때문에 저도 약간 그렇게 생각을 하고 있어요.
Fleta, when he's on the map, nothing is impossible.
오버워치 리그 이제 2020 시즌 챔피언이 되면 이제 그 챔피언 하나만 바라보고 모든 팀들이 이제 1년 정도를 되게 노력을 해서 하는 건데 그 1년의 노력의 시간을 다 보상받는 그런 기분 좋은 하루가 될 것 같아요.
And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Now that you're all properly educated about the history of Fleta and what brought him to this point to becoming the league MVP, it is now time for the final map of this series presented by IBM. It will be Busan to decide which one of these two teams, the Shock or the Dragons, will be advancing into the grand final tomorrow.
I tweeted out, I talked about it yesterday, understanding Fleta's history, where he started on Flash Lux to where he's come now, and the big difference between being a team that's won about 3 maps career-wise to being an almost undefeated team in regular season, #1 seed of arguably the harder region, and heading into now the winners finals, 1 map away from taking it and going to that grand finals. And Fleta was subbed out. He had a weak performance early on in the series. They put Lip in over him on the Hanzo after that early rough start, but he's back in. The MVP of the 2020 season is back in for the map that decides it all, the final control map here. I didn't see this 5th map coming. The first 2 maps were so clean for the San Francisco Shock. The 3rd map was also very rough for the Shanghai Dragons. They barely brought it back. I mean, it was extremely close on Volsky. They almost threw an insane lead. But here we are, full hold on Gibraltar, and now Shanghai might be able to completely turn this around, complete the reverse sweep that Seoul Dynasty could not yesterday. Fleta Tracer.
Yep. Off the bat, we were talking about the stats between Fleta and Striker on this matchup. Didn't really get to see it before, but here we go. Final map presented by IBM is now kicking off. Let's see. Diem and Ons patiently waiting to take their place in the kill feed as Fleta makes his way around the back. He is a sneaky little Tracer. Doesn't find the execution though. Pocket healing was there from Moth in anticipation. But it will get topped up, and Ons draws first blood in the final map. Void taken down, Striker follows up. Izayaki going to be gone. Shanghai Dragons, how do they reply to this?
And this is how the series started, right? Shanghai makes a risky play. They go for a flank. They do something, you know, very aggressive, and they get shut down by defensive play from Shock. Moth is already pocketing Violet. He's boosting his damage so he can get more orb damage done, build a faster trance, but he's also making sure that he can't be killed by Fleta. Fleta's attempt fails miserably. They lose a ton of damage. Fleta has to recall, and the DPS war is won by the Shock. They get the first cap, and it feels like we're going right back to the beginning of the series with this one.
Yep. Ons under a little bit of pressure, grapples away. Safe for the moment. Diem just tries to weave these shots in underneath the drum. Can't quite make it happen yet. This Wood Orb out on the Choihyobin as they apply some pressure here to the enemy Sigma, but he still has the experimental barrier, and Striker is in the back line. Finds Izayaki, taken down yet again. Now Void falling low. There's just no peel available here. Striker comes up with 2. Dan 1 will finally get rid of this pesky Tracer, but at such a significant cost. 3 members are dead here on the side of the Shanghai Dragons, and Striker's res back into the fray.
Yeah, the rare Widowmaker reset as well. You almost never see that because Widowmaker has such great mobility with her grapple to get out, but this is one of those situations where DM just has to jump off the map and get back with his squad and try to look for another sightline, another angle. There was no way out there. He just wants to reset as soon as possible. But right now, 65% on the board here. Striker's got a pulse bomb. Shanghai Dragons need to play slow, need to play around trancing second in this upcoming team fight.
Given Striker's penchant for getting into the back line and trying to assassinate Izayaki, they very well could force that Transcendence out very early Minefield going to be used by Stand 1. So he just rolls across the point, looking to get top back up. Has to play very respectful to the Shock because of those Discord orbs. Violet does get taken down. Moth does manage to bring him back into the fight, but then falls to Izayaki. So a nice trade here for the Shanghai Dragons. Is that enough for them to break through the point? Transcendence rolling for Violet, looking to keep everybody alive as the Flux comes in. On to Void. Does manage to survive for a little bit longer, but now Izayaki going to be taken down yet again. Pulse Bomb comes through, doesn't manage to find anything. Fleta gets the headshots in on a Striker as we are at 99% here for the side of the San Francisco Shock. And it seems like Shanghai Dragons will be able to persevere, will be able to break through, get the cap on the point. So will not get perfected here on the first round.
No, not going to happen, but the Shock, the crazy thing about this is normally when you have that 99-0, you feel like, okay, the Shock just build ults and they win, right? But they got greedy. They used the trance there. Sure, Izayaki's trance force, and Choihyobin thought, okay, if I use this late, the Flux late, I can actually turn this and we might be able to just win this first round. But they used a lot of ults and they didn't succeed. So now the ult economy pretty even. In fact, a slight lead for the Shanghai Dragons. And that matters a lot here when you're talking about ults like Flux.
Ooh. Well, that's going to equalize things quite a bit here. Striker finds the assassination on to Fleta. Now Izayaki gone. The headshot comes through. Res around the corner. LeeJaeGon puts it back into the fight, but Striker strikes again. This time finding Diem. Getting rid of the Widowmaker. There's so much pressure being alleviated here for the rest of the Shock members by Striker, just constantly harassing each and every member of Shanghai Dragons in his sights. Makes his way back over to the point, getting a little bit of healing here as he tries to stay alive. Pulse Bomb now comes online. Fleta still holding on to one of his own. Start getting the cap to come through. Shanghai Dragons cannot allow this to happen. They get pushed away. Cap coming back in yet again. The flip will be there, and Shanghai now have to play on the point, desperately try to get this flip. Smurf of all people finds the kill. The stick comes in. Void's going to be taken down. LeeJaeGon gets a res on the Fleta, putting him back into the fight, but now Izayaki will fall. Fleta dashing around half HP, trying to get topped up, trying to find a use for this Pulse Bomb, but it's just not going to happen. They get another tag in onto the point to force out the OT yet again, but you can see how quickly it starts bleeding away. They get a little bit of a cap to move forward there on that point, but 56% is as good as it gets on Sanctuary. Shanghai Dragons now, again, in the final round. Shock, if they can 2-0 this yet again, they will be punching their ticket to the grand final.
So close, the closest they've been since that Volskaya map, and it feels like, anyway, and Fleta just getting outperformed by Striker. On's coming up bigger with these kills. The Shanghai Dragons just totally outzoned, outpositioned there. They had to give the cap because San Francisco Shock had better position than them. Despite the fact that no one was dead, despite the fact that they were the defenders, San Francisco Shock put some pressure into the back line with Striker and Smurf. Shanghai Dragons had to reposition. They could not get back on the point to touch to delay. They had to look for that later team fight. It did not happen. Shanghai Dragons, I feel, really need the first cap this time around if they're going to want to win this round and bring us to a third one. Or it might just be their loss here, despite what was such a great comeback so far.
Will just be the mirror compositions yet again. Izayaki falling low. Discord Orb out onto that Zenyatta here, but good pile driver sets up for the kill onto Ons. Great capitalization. Striker again, finding a pick. Fleta doing the damnedest. Try to find another one. They will be able to press forward. Stand one collecting the kills as they finish off Choihyobin and Violet. And that should be the setup here for the first point cap to be in the hands of the Shanghai Dragons.
You know, Fleta always bets on his mechanics. He always takes the risky play, even when the stakes are this high. That's why he's got the deadlift named after him. The stakes were always high for Flash Lux. Now all the way here, he does make the big play this time, but Void will get traded out in the start. Actually survives, or rather, Ons will survive.
Izayaki dead again. Now LeeJaeGon out of the fight, so no chance of a res coming through. Seems like it's just going to be a very short little cap here for the Shanghai Dragons. This Fleta falls on the back end of the fight, so 22% is as good as it gets for them for now. Now they have to reapproach.
Now the really nice thing for the Dragons, I mean the silver lining you could say, is that Choihyobin doesn't have a Gravitic Flux yet, so they're going to be able to force their way through this choke, but it won't be easy, and they will have to deal with Ons, and as well as Striker coming around for the long flanks, playing the long game here. But at least they will be able to force their way onto the point. As you can see here, they do get out without a challenge.
Trying to cover his rear there with that Venom Mine. Sure that there's no cheeky flanks to be found. Minefield was used up here above the point. Was looking for the pickoff, but they just all move away. So the mines don't get any value. Smurf rolls through, takes down Void, follows up on the Diem, giving them a quick little smack on the nose. Finishes off the enemy Widowmaker, and now Fleta in dire straits, is trying to peel back over towards the spawn. Seems like he will be able, nope, the striker is there, so will not be able to survive. Diem does find the answering little kill on the back end, but good push away on that res. LeeJaeGon does manage to find Fleta.
They've got to get something in this fight. This is so critical.
Field's going to be dropped. Flux coming through from Choihyobin. Transcendence rolling now for Izayaki as he looks to clear out the mines. Pushing over, Fleta does find Smurf, starts getting the cap to draw the rest of the members of the Shock over towards the point. They're starting to reroute now, and Shanghai do manage to get the flip just off of that Tracer presence alone. Flux coming through, Void drops Choihyobin to the ground. Izayaki has the follow-up for the kill. As Void is under fire, falling lower and lower. Striker looking for his second kill in the fight, but the heal's looking pretty good. They will not be able to find that pick-off, so Shanghai back in the driver's seat, but can they hold it?
Yeah, and let's see Achilles if Stand 1 can have as good of a minefield as Smurf just did to try to deny the approach. Remember, you just mentioned his last one was kind of a weird one on the high ground, didn't get value. He's 10% away of one of the best zone control ultimates here to try to bring this up to 99. Fleta, potential pulse, holds it.
Dashes away, heard the shot coming through. Eludes Ons there for the moment. Picks up the mini pack, still under fire. Smurf looks to chase him down. Void falling low, pocket heals start coming up from LeeJaeGon. The pulse bump from Fleta off screen, gonna be good as he finds Smurf. Now Striker, headshot by Diem. Ons taken down as well, no DPS in the fight, and the cleanup is going to be there. Shanghai Dragons now in the lead here on this second round. Mecha base very well could be theirs.
Yeah, very much a minefield here to help secure everything, a very safe decision, but it is going to be something they lack here in this upcoming fight. Fleta has been hounding Smurf down, chasing him, securing these kills, got him with the pulse bomb eventually there in that last fight. They've got this nano boost for longevity. This goes to 99, it feels like no matter what, but can they just bring us to a third round? That's the question.
Striker trying to get around the back. Nice bionade there on the Choihyobin, but he can't finish him off before the heals start coming back through from the Mercy. Void gonna have to use the kinetic grasp to keep himself alive, and Fleta in the corner almost has this pulse bomb. OT is bleeding away, as you say. They do manage to tag back over onto the point, as we will go ahead and take a look over here. Stand 1 taken down. 3 members out of the fight for the Shanghai Dragons. They're gonna have to reset and come back in. They've got a little bit of leeway, but if they can't get this flip, then that is it.
Fleta, he gets a kill here, but it's not the trade he wants, right? I mean, they could have just regrouped, but they got greedy. They thought they could take the fight. They thought they could force this one out. Now the San Francisco Shock, ult advantage here, especially in this gravitic flux. Stand 1 is going to have to use this minefield in the longer fight once they get to the point. They were super aggressive with trying to deny the touch of the Shock, but it didn't work out. And now they've got one fight left. Grand Finals, the first slot on the line in this team fight. Battling for that flank, but they're going to have to touch.
5% left to go. The flux going to be finds Izayaki, finds both supports around the back. Diem going to be taken out. Now Izayaki, the collapse comes in. Violet finds the kill. They're looking for LeeJaeGon, and they will have it right as he pops the Valkyrie, and this very well could be it. The minefields are out on the point. They find Striker, but they need so much more than that, and I just don't think they're going to find it. Pulse Bomb comes through, but it's greeted by an Immortality field from Violet. Fleta desperately trying to dance around as best as he can. Avoids the one shot there from Ons. Fleta does fall. The OT bleeds away, and that is it. The San Francisco Shock take this series yet again. Much like we saw yesterday versus the Seoul Dynasty, they do not fall in the final hour. They get pushed to the edge, but they push back when it matters.
Look at how happy they are. A hard-fought series, but they punched their ticket to that grand finals match to await their opponents. It may be the Shanghai Dragons who meet them there once again, the big favorites to take it through the losers bracket as well. You talk about Shanghai Dragons being favorites though, and this series was a rocky one for them. 0-2 to start. The comeback we saw from Shanghai Dragons as well wasn't a clean one. It was hard fought. It was very shaky and rocky. The 2 maps they won to bring us to a 5th map were nothing as clean as what we saw from the first 2 wins for the Shock. And you can see the disappointment on their faces. They've got a long run if they're going to make it to that grand final spot. They can absolutely do it, and we know they're capable of doing it, but it is not going to be an easy road. San Francisco Shock on their way to being potentially the first repeat champions of the Overwatch League here, and they took this series, even though it was a 3-2, I feel they took this series in dominant fashion.
Yeah, just all the way through, it was definitely Shanghai Dragons stepping up and playing at a similar level of the San Francisco Shock, rather than them playing down and kind of losing their groove like we saw a bit from them yesterday versus the Seoul Dynasty. You know, Ons, He started to slip a little bit in that series. He was pretty consistent the whole way through in this series, and Striker just absolutely popped off like a madman. Everybody on this roster, both the people who were subbed out, which I guess is really only Super, and then the entire finishing roster that played the majority of the series, everybody had their moments where they just completely popped off and helped shut down the Shanghai Dragons.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go by transitive property, this is San Francisco Shock coming up with a championship victory.
Yeah, I mean, they beat the two toughest opponents, arguably based on the transitive property you talked about, both in fifth final maps. So both of those fifth and final maps were pretty one-sided, right? And they complete their revenge arc, against Shanghai Dragons for the Stage 3 finals that Shanghai was able to take last year, if you kind of believe in that sort of storyline, right? Shanghai Dragons also, one thing I will say to close us out on the negative side as well, a sad thing for Shanghai fans is a little bit of holes shown here. Very scrappy play, very easily countered by the Shock. Anyone who faces them going forward, including the Shock themselves, who might have that same rematch, can abuse this again. And the Shanghai Dragons don't really have time to get coached to fix this because we're going straight into these next matches. You've got the losers match, then that final match, and then tomorrow, grand final. So if they make that run, there's not a whole lot of time for adaptation. So that's a very, very scary thing for this team. That was one of the big favorites to win the whole tournament.
Yeah, but for the San Francisco Shock, they get some time to take a break, just sit back, watch the competition, and see who their opponent is going to be tomorrow. But they got this victory here very much on the back of one standout player, and that is Striker. This guy is our player of the match, presented by Xfinity. Striker, absolute domination from him, left, right, and center.
Didn't matter if he was playing against Fleta or Lip, he was by far the better Hanzo. He saved several team fights on his own just from headshots from really, really nice storm arrows. Like, he was able to line up storm arrows and hit crazy headshots across the board, sometimes down on members, like I said, but also his Dragon Strike usage was extremely effective, way better than either of the Dragon Strike users that we had for the Shanghai Dragons, either of the Hanzo players there. He bought time, he had point control, he was mobile, he was roaming around, constantly repositioning, and he had a fantastic Hanzo game. We talk about this guy's Tracer. That was the stat we were talking about. He outplayed Fleta's Tracer there in the final map, but the majority of this series was played by his Hanzo, and 100% well-deserved player of the match to bring them to the grand finals. He killed it.
Yes, absolutely did, and quite literally in many of those cases. I mean, some great stats coming through here from Striker on that Hanzo. I mean, even if he wasn't playing the Hanzo, his Tracer, especially there on the final map, on the first map when they were playing on Oasis, his Tracer was still phenomenal. So this guy right now, absolutely unstoppable. It's a very big prospect for any team to take down the Shock right now. So two teams coming close, but they can't quite do it. Shock, congratulations on making it into the final. That does it for this series. We, of course, have two more coming up. But before that, let's go ahead and hear from Super, the guy who spent most of the time on the bench, standing by for an interview with Danny Lim.
Wolfie and Achilles, thank you very much. What is up, everybody? Danny Lim here for the post-match interview. And we have, for today, Super from San Francisco Shock. What's up, bro? How are you doing?
Oh, feeling pretty good, Danny. Cannot lie, I'm feeling pretty good.
That was a great match, and of course, dude, congratulations on the big win. Let's just dive right into the interview. So, you know how I'm sure you're aware, a lot of people are talking about which region's better, APAC or NA. And as a team in the grand finals that have beaten both of the APAC region teams, Seoul Dynasty and the Shanghai Dragons, what are your personal thoughts on the APAC region right now? Like, do you think it's just all hype, or are they living up to that hype, or what are your thoughts?
No, I mean, both Shanghai and Seoul, they played pretty good matches. We started off strong in both matches and then had some trouble in the latter half. But I think that just kind of shows to the the strong mental fortitude that these APAC teams have. Because it's not easy to go down 2-0 and then have to win the next two maps. So they're definitely putting up a good showing. But fortunately we still won.
All right. They're a good team, but you guys are a little bit better, right?
a little bit.
a little bit. Okay, and of course, dude, we have to talk about your hog. Dude. You were popping off on Roadhog today. It was really fun to just seeing you play Roadhog. As a main tank player on the San Francisco Shock, like how did you get to play Roadhog, and how was your adjustment of playing that hero? And of course, like how did the team decide to have you playing that off tank role?
Well, actually, me playing Hog it's not really a new thing. But because I played Hog a lot, even before Overwatch League. Like the team I was on, there was kind of like a running joke among teams in NA that if my team had, like, if there was a 6 Roadhog meta, we would be the best at it because we just all liked playing Hog. And then going back to Season 1, we had a strat where on Route 66, I would run Roadhog sometimes as like the main tank, and we would play around that. And I would also swap to it on Junkertown sometimes. So it's not a new thing for me to play Roadhog, and I'm just really comfortable in the character. So just kind of slid right into it.
Would you say you enjoy playing Hog more or Reinhardt more? Because I know, because you're you're known for your Reinhardt.
Yeah. I don't know. I think they're both fun. They both have those moments where the serotonin hits you. Like if you hit like a perfectly sized right click that just one taps someone, like I actually did today on Fleta, or you hit a 6-man shatter. Those serotonin doses, they come in pretty strong amounts. So it just depends. I don't know. I like them both a lot.
Okay. Also, one last question for you, Super. With this win, you guys are now 1 match away from becoming a back-to-back champions in the Overwatch League. So, I mean, what's your mindset? What's the team's mindset going into your final match tomorrow?
Well, our mindset is to win. That's usually what you got to do. And we're gonna, we made some mistakes. We'll go over what went wrong today, what went well, and hopefully we'll correct those for tomorrow.
Yeah, all right. Well, Super, dude, congratulations again, and dude, I'll be rooting for you. Good luck tomorrow, and everybody. That is it for the post-match interview. We're going to go ahead and take a quick break, but after we come back, we have Seoul Dynasty versus Philadelphia Fusion. So stick around.